Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back to yet another episode of the Wisdom Save podcast. I'm Ken,
I'm Hannah.
and today we're going to jump right into it. We've got a topic that both of us are very excited about. This is, again, kind of like for those of you who are just starting to follow the format, we kind of had that plan of like doing like back and forth topics. I would do something, Hannah would do something. We have reached the end of that first cycle, and so now we're doing kind of a communal, a group podcast. It's a topic that
A together episode.
yeah. And we're gonna kind of do these like we'll do like me, her topics, and then we'll end it with like one topic that the two of us know a lot about, or we're both very excited about, or something that like we talk about and we plan out ahead of time. It's a little different than some of our other episodes' themes were.
And it's going to be a little more freeform because while I wrote a bunch of things down for this, it's kind of all over the place.
I mean, that's kind of half the fun of it, because it's more of like a walk down memory lane than anything.
Right.
Okay, so instead of continuing to hint at the topic, so we have mentioned before, I think at least once or twice on the podcast, that we have, for the longest time, we still do, but it's a new campaign now, but we've had a very long-running Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition campaign. We ran it for like a little over 5 years.
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah, it was like a little over 5 years. I was the DM.
We started in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, and then we ended in 2019.
Yeah, like October, November 2019, I think. Yeah. Wow. What a time. Oh wait, no, it was like August.
It ended in 2019.
It ended in 2019. But yeah, so for this one, considering that you all by now know that we are humongous Dungeons and Dragons nerds, we figured we would, for those of you who maybe are interested in Dungeons and Dragons,
or know the campaign,
or if you maybe know the campaign, if you're one of our players or someone who's heard about it, who's watching or listening. This one is going to kind of be like a walk through some of our. What did we decide? We're doing
our favorite moments.
Favorite moments.
Notable moments.
Yeah. And I might also do. I had mentioned this to you as well, but I might do a couple of little like behind the scenes things. Like now that the campaign's a year out, it's like, the veil. The curtain has been pulled back. I can maybe give away some of the secrets.
At least on our plot, because he mentioned a second campaign. Once the first one ended, we started a second campaign that was a time skip. And so now we're playing our first campaign's characters' children.
Yes.
While they wade through the pits of hell.
Not literal, but metaphorical hell. Yeah, so I guess how do we want to start this one? Where do we want to start? Do we want to like give them an introduction into like our campaign and like how it started and who it was real quick? Or?
Let's give a brief summary on the characters first, because it doesn't really matter what they did if they don't know who the hell they are.
Fair. Okay.
Very brief. Because there's about 15 characters to go through.
Yes, so that kind of an interesting thing. We ran like several segmented parts of campaigns that I weaved into one huge story with a bunch of extra stuff because I put a world out in front of them and they just started exploring, which as a DM is like the most exciting thing that could happen, but also required a lot of time and work to kind of weave together everything, which was, part of the reason why it took 5 years, but also because we kind of didn't really want to stop playing.
Well, also very basically, Ken's probably going to explain what the actual campaign was, but to put it very basically, we started or had to finish kind of a war, and so we started with one character each. There's 5 of us.
Yeah.
Including Ken, because he played a character since it was some of our first campaigns.
I had like a guide to help them who eventually I had intended to be able to write her out of the story, and then they all ended up liking her so much that they just dragged her everywhere.
We kept her. So.
Yeah.
So we all had one character each, so there was 5. And then when the campaign got to the point where there was like a war to be fought, we all brought in 2 more characters each for ourselves, which is why there ends up being 15 of us.
Right.
Because each character eventually plays 3 people.
Right. So basically, we started off with I had actually wanted to run a level 0 adventure. Half of the players in my party at that time had experience playing 5th edition and other editions of Dungeons and Dragons. I at that point, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Kyle, but I think I had more experience.
You're probably going to be wrong.
Yeah, I somehow I feel like he's been playing for longer than me. He's also older than me. I've been playing at that point I think for wow, like 6, maybe 7 years almost. And DMing for at least 6 of them. So I started off with kind of like a level 0 campaign. It was my first time DMing 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. It was 2 of my players, Hannah being one of them, first time playing Dungeons and Dragons, period. So I wanted to kind of like introduce them to the concept of role playing without necessarily caring too much about the mechanics and let them kind of work their way into the mechanics of their classes. So I adapted an old, like, first edition, I think maybe earlier, but I think first edition module called Treasure Hunt. They got kidnapped by pirates and then shipwrecked on an island, and they had to find their way off.
And the 5 people that we had in the beginning was...
Oh, yep. So the original party, I played a shipwrecked princess of sorts. Not quite, because she was just kind of like the daughter of the
heir to the throne.
Yeah, daughter of the ruler of a small like
port town,
like merchant country. I played Melisana. She started off as just kind of like a sailor's daughter with some rudimentary survival skills and a knack for getting herself into trouble. And in order to get them off the island, she ended up taking a vow to serve Timora, the goddess of luck, and she became the party's cleric.
I played Holly, who was from the island next door.
Yeah.
She lived in a tribe of like almost... What kind of like they're like northern warriors?
Yeah, it's like because this took place in the Forgotten Realms. For those of you who are familiar with it, it's like they're like the Forgotten Realms version of like Viking and Norseman invaders. They're like they were the Northmen. I think it's a very like on the nose reference. But yeah, like your families are the descendant of like basically Norse raiders who settled in the coastal villages on the island.
And she in her own right was kind of like a woodland princess. She's a lord's daughter.
Yeah, daughter of the chief.
Yeah, daughter of the chief of their village, and she got nabbed, and then she ended up becoming a ranger because she found the ship captain that we'll probably talk about in a minute's heavy crossbow. So she became a ranger.
Yeah, I think you kind of already had an idea that you wanted to do some archery stuff.
I already wanted to be a ranger.
Oh, you already wanted to be a ranger, yeah. And then you found the crossbow, and you're like, I can shoot stuff and hang out in the woods.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite moments. That I have listed. It's right on the top of my notes of my favorite moments.
Then we'll get to that once we finish the little description.
But then the other people on the ship were our friends.
Yep. Do you want to do one next, and I'll
sure. Actually, I want to do Lundquist because Lundquist was also on the boat with us when we got kidnapped, but he wasn't in our first episode because I don't know, he didn't want to be, or he had something else better to do.
Yeah, like the first session we planned, it's like something came up. I don't even remember what it was because it was so many years ago, like 6 years ago at this point. But he wasn't there for the first game.
His character was on the boat.
Right.
But spoiler warning, the boat got cut in half, and that's why we were able to get off. But apparently his character, to explain why Sean wasn't present the first episode, his character was on the other half of the boat than us. And so he ended up on a different part of the island and joined us for episode 2.
Yeah, but we eventually found him once they had maneuvered their way around the island for long enough.
But Sean played Lundquist, a dwarven monk.
Yep.
And later took classes in cleric.
Yeah, he needed a little bit of divinity in his life, he said. So he learned the clerical arts from Melisana, and then promptly forgot that he had spells for like a majority of the campaign.
But he's very fun, and his main thing literally, all you need to know about Lundquist is run, jump high, hit people in the dick. That's it.
Yeah, like it started, I think, like as kind of an in joke, like since he was a dwarf and most of the people they were fighting were like orcs, half orcs, humans, goblins too, but he didn't seem to like discriminate in that sense. But he's like, oh yeah, I'm like about like stomach height, so if I give him a swift punch like straight forward, I'm gonna hit him in the dick.
Punch him in
So
the penis.
yeah, so Lundquist was world renowned for his genitalia based violence, and that just kind of became a running gag that absolutely lasted the whole 5 years and then some.
So then you take the next one, I guess.
Yeah, so then the next character that we had was Kyle actually played Callista. Callista was she was a tiefling bard. She was a bit of a storyteller. She had sort of like a fascination with the concept of heroes. She started off like being a little bit younger and naive as the rest of us were. And she had like a little bit of a lisp.
Which was a funny joke because Kyle used to always buy chicken nuggets, so he'd be talking with his mouth full, and so we played it out that Callista had a lisp, but eventually she grew out of it.
Yeah, during a time skip at one point, she like met up with someone and got like
Speech therapy?
Yeah, like speech therapy or something like that, and then like worked out her lisp. But that was kind of like it was an interesting like how we were all doing accents. He was just kind of like doing a lisp for her, and that was fun for a while, but
Yeah.
definitely hard to keep up.
Well, I mean, I think also just he eventually stopped buying 20-piece chicken nuggets.
That's true.
And then the last one was Dagar?
Yeah. Dave was one of our. He eventually left the campaign for
whatever reason.
Yeah, just like schedules not working out and things like that. But
he was a sun elf.
Yeah, high elf, but yes, he was
a high elf fighter and painter.
Yes, he had a weird penchant for painting. He was the character. He was like a bit of an eccentric genius type character.
Oh, and we're gonna put up pictures of everybody because.
Oh yes, very important. We have like really well done. Hannah actually drew all of them. We have very well done pictures, portraits of each and every one of these characters. So while we're talking about them, you'll probably see them on the screen.
You've probably already seen 5 of them.
That's true.
But those were the first 5 people that were actually on the boat. And then there was about 10 more of them
that came in later. So after they got themselves off the boat, and due to the help of Timora, who was the luck goddess that Melisana eventually swore an oath to and became a priestess of, it was an island that like she had worshippers on, and her statue was still there. And she basically said like, "Hey, I'm gonna like join my service. I will guide you to find a way off the island, but I'm gonna sink it in 24 hours because."
So get on or stay.
Yeah,
like get off or stay on.
Yeah, this island, it was cursed for a variety of other reasons. There were like monsters and pirates that had taken over the island, and she wanted to sink it to sort of like retain some dignity to a place of her holy worship. And so she helped the party find a way off the island, and we rowed our sorry asses over ocean all the way to the Sword Coast, where they eventually took a job for a dwarven merchant and his 2 brothers in Neverwinter, and we worked that into the Lost Mines of Phandelver adventure, which is like one of the most common like starter adventures for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. It also like just came out, and I'm like, oh, this is a good one for running new players, so we'll start with that, and then we'll just see where the plot goes.
So long story short, we got kidnapped by pirates, abandoned on an island, found our way off. Basically sailed across the sea on a dinghy.
It's like 18 days over ocean. Yeah, it was rough.
Landed in a port town. Didn't know exactly where we were, so we took a job with some random caravan. Decided to go out into the woods to Phandalin, this like nowhere town in the woods. Ended up having to solve a bunch of their problems and like save their mine and like help them like get out of the clutches of a bunch of bandits.
Yeah.
And then eventually we
bandits and dragons and drow, oh my.
There was no drow.
Yeah, the Black Spider was a drow.
Oh, he was a drow. We fought the Black Spider because he was the one controlling the gangs. We got rid of a bunch of goblins because they were terrorizing everybody. And then we killed a nearby dragon because we wanted to.
I think, like, at that point, you guys kind of were, like, on a little bit of a power trip. You had heard about the dragon previously, and you had actually gone to the ruins of Thunder Tree. There was a green dragon.
We went to the ruins of Thunder Tree because there was a person in town or something like that that was there from before or something, was from that Thunder Tree, the ruin place.
Yeah, their family was from there, yeah.
And they had
before
forgotten...
it was destroyed in a volcanic eruption.
They'd forgotten, like, an important relic, so we got the relic and fought a bunch of spiders off to get it. And then we brought it back. It was an emerald necklace.
Yes.
And then Callista gave it back to the family. And
because
then,
she was the lawful good member of the party.
Because that's technically what we were supposed to do with it.
It was worth a lot, though.
So then Dagar convinced Holly to steal it back out of the woman's house, which we did. And then I took the necklace after Dagar stole it from the house, hid it in the woods, and then waited until we were on our way to go back home because Melisana sent a letter to her dad and was like, we're stuck here, please come get us.
Yeah, and it was the stormy season, so they couldn't really get boats across the sea by the time we had gotten there. Like, the storms had just started to pick up, and it was bad, which, like, they were starting around the time that you sailed off, but you still had timorous blessings, so you were able to carve your way through.
That's also why the big ship that stole us sank, is because it got caught in a storm.
Yes.
So we couldn't get off until he could come get us, but then eventually he did, and I unearthed the necklace and went home with it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was a time.
But then that's when the time skip happened.
But see, the thing is, I think that, like, it's become kind of a meme to, like, be like, oh yeah, Dagar, like, he is the one with, like, the kind of shady ideas. Technically speaking, after Callista returned the necklace to her, she did say, oh, like, as a thank you for doing this, like, this is my grandmother's heirloom, but, like, I'm just happy to know that it's safe. You guys should take it as a reward.
Oh,
and then
that's why
she was like, no.
Yes.
We couldn't.
The woman said, you should be able to keep this because you, like, I'm just glad that it's okay. And I was like, we didn't all make that decision. Callista was just like, no, keep it.
Yeah.
Which, Kyle, like, if it was Hannah doing that, I'd 100% on your side.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's yours, you keep it, like, go ahead. But Holly was like, excuse me. We didn't all get to make that choice.
I would like to be consulted on business matters.
And so we stole it back. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have done it on my own.
But... You didn't just steal it back. You guys threw a party and spent like a day knocking on doors in town being like, yo, we're having a big party because we drove the bandits out of town. Everyone go to the bar. And you got everyone into the bar. You told Callista to play music to distract her, then distracted everyone in town because she got a good performance role, and then you two left the party and snuck into her house with her kids sleeping in it.
I would like to clarify that everything up until the party, I did not plan. All of that was Dagar.
That's true. Dagar was responsible for you guys getting into trouble.
I was just hanging out, drinking outside of the bar, or inside of the bar, actually. And then Dagar was like, come outside the bar and talk to me. And I was like, okay.
Why do you want to talk to me? You usually just your head up your own ass.
You're usually calling me filth. What do you want? And so then he's like, you want to get the necklace back, don't you? And I was like, I mean, I would have liked to have just kept it, but like, I guess. And he's like, well, let's go get it. And I was like, yeah, fuck it. I'm drunk. Let's go get it. And then I kept it, so he couldn't have it.
Oh, that's so funny. It, like, a little bit of a tangent, but still related. I really appreciate how the fact that, like, we could just, like, and that's the magic of D&D, like, as a game, is that, like, we had a whole conversation of, like, recalling those events as if they were a real thing that happened, and they happened to our fictional characters about 4.5 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Like, because we went on this adventure.
Yeah, and we remember it vividly. So
those are already some, we went on a tangent already, so that's some of the little...
Oh, you're in for a wild ride. If you like tangents, this is your episode.
Don't worry, this is going to be a 2-hour-long episode. But anyway,
easy.
We went home. Melisana brought most of us home.
Yes, you ended up all taking... You had to, like, head out...
I think Callista stayed. She went to Neverwinter with us to get to the boat, but then
Well,
she stayed.
yeah, because we had to travel back up north because we were close enough to Neverwinter, and they docked us at the ports in Neverwinter. And
That's
we
why I took the. That's why I could take the necklace because Dagar stayed in Phandalin.
Yeah, because once you cleared out that goblin castle, he was like, "Hey, does anybody live in that castle?" And
Hmm.
you had found Droop, who was the
The
little.
little goblin
There
baby.
was a little he was a goblin, kind of a goblin runt. Um, he was picked on a lot by some of the other goblins, and the local bandit group in that town, as well as the Black Spider, who was a mage who was trying to basically. There was this mine that they were the dwarves that had hired the party was trying to find. It was an ancestral dwarven mine. There is a forge somewhere in that mine that had the ability to like imbue armor and weapons and tools with magical abilities.
They can make magic weapons and
Yeah, and
armor.
they wanted to. He wanted to reactivate the well so that he could like gain incredible magical powers, and so he had like an army of like bandits and goblins and other troublemakers in the local area to like distract people and keep people away while he tried to explore the mine and reactivate it.
Dagar stayed to make trouble.
Right, and it was because he had taken on little Droop, he was a little goblin you guys had rescued from the hobgoblin bullies, who he was like kind of forced to work with.
Hmm.
And you like befriended him and you kept him in your party, and then surprise, during a moment of panic and nerves, and then he manifested psychic abilities because he had psychic powers.
Hmm.
And so very rapidly, Dagar taught him how to read and write, and then he quickly surpassed Dagar in those matters. And very quickly thereafter, Dagar was like, "Oh, I want to take this old goblin castle. I deserve a castle because I've worked so hard and I kept these ignoramuses alive. So I should get my just desserts." And then Droop was like, "Yeah, I'll hang out with him and make sure that the castle's going okay because I'm his lackey, so I have to follow him around," and then pretty much proceeded to like,
Become in charge.
yeah. But the key was to let Dagar think he's in charge of everything at all times, and then actually be in charge,
Right.
and then you're fine.
But anyways,
But yeah.
character overviews.
Anyway,
We went home. We had a mini time skip because we talked about having a time skip between the first and the second campaign.
yeah,
This one was only 3 years long.
yes,
And it was in the middle of our first campaign. So we all went home for 3 years.
mm-hmm.
And then when we came back, we did a little bit of a spin about until we realized the problem was really, really big and we needed the help of everybody across our like little nation.
We almost missed something. Um, we talked about the ruins of that place and that dragon that we killed.
Yeah.
While we were waiting for the boat to show up in Neverwinter, we had like a month, 2 months to kill just sitting around in the town. You guys had heard the rumors of the dragon, but you left the first time without like going deeper into the ruins and finding the dragon. And then you're like, well, shit, we want to like. We like saved this town, like we're really strong. We can go fight this dragon.
Yeah.
So you guys went back to go fight Venom thing.
Uh-huh.
You did your hanging out on the rooftop 200 feet away, sniping it trick. Lundquist ran up the side of the tower and
was
dive
like
bombed
body
it down.
slamming the
Yeah,
thing.
and then after you guys slayed that dragon, what did you start calling yourselves?
Oh, we're the Wyrmtamers.
Yes. So after killing the dragon, I think it was Dagar who came up with the idea.
It was Dagar's idea.
Yeah, he decided, oh, we're like slayers of dragons. We are these legendary heroes now. Any worm, WYRM, the fantasy spelling of dragon, or I guess like old European or something. We tame any worm we see. Some big dramatic showing, and the name kind of stuck, and so our adventuring group started calling ourselves the Wyrmtamers. But anyway, so after we became the Wyrmtamers, got back on that boat, headed back home, spent a couple of years at home, kind of like settling down. And in that time, the dragon and some of the cultists that they were originally supposed to find, but then because they left and then came back later, they ended up just finding like the bones and tattered robes of the cultists who had since pissed off the dragon and become his food. that was a plant for like a secret subplot that was cooking in the shadows.
Okay.
The cult that you guys came to know as the cult of the dragon,
Mm-hmm.
cult worshippers of Tiamat,
Mm-hmm.
the five-headed evil dragon goddess, were in the process of like they were trying to like recruit dragons to their side and like building an army so that they could like begin their long-term takeover plans of the entire continent.
Yes.
And this was kind of all brewing behind the scenes before the time skip. They kind of ignored that plot and headed back home and took their time skip, and then that gave that group some time to move. So we ended up picking back up with the adventures, the Tyranny of Dragons adventure module, Horde of the Dragon Queen, and Rise of Tiamat. As a general thing, but I kind of like took those adventures as like an open sandbox and then just rolled with it and spread it out in a million different directions. But that was the general plot: was this evil dragon cult was trying to resurrect their god. They've been working in the shadows, and now all of a sudden they're waking up and they're getting involved with stuff that your characters cared about, and you kind of got thrown back into the middle of it.
And so the entire continent, or not the whole continent, at least our side of
Mostly
it.
just the Sword Coast, so the western section of the continent where everyone was from.
We're getting involved in it, and so we ended up bringing the rest of the characters in to be on that council that was trying to fight that cult.
Yeah, so that's skipping over like a couple of members of the party plus a couple of new characters came in. Melisana was still at home. I played a different character who we'll introduce later. Dave played a different character as well, but that's when we ran into the scheduling issues, and so that character was only with us for a short period of
Right.
time. And also we added in now one of our longtime players, Ryan.
Yes.
Who, well, we'll talk about his character in a second, but our party kind of shifted up a little bit as they kind of traveled some of the areas to like north and east of the Sword Coast, kind of following this cult's activities, following their like attacks on villages, and kind of like interfering with their plans to figure out what they were up to, why they were doing it, and like once they got to the end of that, like they chased them to a flying castle. You dived on board the flying castle and ended up fighting a dragon there. You made friends with a giant.
Right, but we're gonna talk about the characters first.
No, I know. I just get excited.
I know, we're not there yet.
Okay, so, but anyway, all this stuff happened. We'll get back to that. But eventually, once they figured it all out, they formed a council in the Sword Coast metropolis city of Waterdeep. And this council called in a number of talented adventurers, friends, and acquaintances of the party who could provide expertise in things like that. And the intention of this was to have like different squads of 5-player character units go out and do different missions at the same time to interfere with the cult or benefit the council. So everyone was playing 3 characters at this point in time, but we were going off on different missions, and it'd be like, okay, so like next week we'll play this mission and each of you are playing one of your 3 characters. They make a team, they go off and do their thing. We play that out, and then we jump to the next party, so on and so forth. It was kind of like a squad mission thing where we shuffled around our characters, but each of us had 3 pieces on the board, I guess.
Right, and pretty much at this point is when Dagar kind of either blended into the council as an NPC or like stopped.
Yeah, he didn't even
around.
Show up until the second thing as a representative of Fandolin. But yeah,
Dagar had a second Dave had a second character called Barash, who was a brass dragonborn, and he was annoying as crap. We don't need to talk about him.
We love you, Dave, but also
Dave is amazing.
But Barash was intentionally existed to be a pain in the ass to like half of the party.
He did this like little wiggly dance until he died once, and that was the one good thing he did. But we're not talking about him. So around the time Dave was gone is when we got Geth, which is Ryan's character, his first one. He's I almost said Fandolin. He's a paladin. To Bahamut.
Right.
A lawful good silver dragon god.
Yeah, like he's a platinum dragon. It's something loftier than that. But basically, he was a holy knight who swore an oath of vengeance and worshipped Bahamut, the evil cultists, were cultists to Tiamat. Bahamut and Tiamat are siblings. She is evil. He is good. They're basically opposites. This is like the dragon version of God and Satan, biblical style.
Pretty much.
So he was like a holy knight who swore an oath of vengeance because the cultist had destroyed, ransacked, and raided his hometown, killed his family, and stole everyone's valuable possessions to add to their Dragon Queen's horde.
So he was already kind of on his way to go do what we were doing, and we ran across him in a bar while we were on another caravan.
Yeah.
While being a part of that council thing, or while on the way.
This was while we were tailing the cult,
Okay.
because the cult was in the caravan. So you got yourselves gone as bodyguards to a different caravan, and you were following the cult to see where they were going and trying to lay low.
Okay, so we found him, and I immediately challenged him to an arm wrestling competition. I can't remember who won.
I don't remember. I definitely think at the very least you put up a good fight, because he was impressed.
And then we went on our merry way with him as a part of our group. Yeah. And then it's probably a good time to go over the rest of the characters just so we can get them out of the way and start talking about moments.
Jumping ahead, but those were all of our characters. At this point, the party, the core party, consisted of Melisana, my human cleric, Holly, your human ranger, Stieg Lundquist, Sean's dwarven monk, and I think he had multi-classed into cleric by that point.
Maybe, probably.
You
can tell.
Yeah. Kyle's character, Callista, who was a bard. She actually took
tiefling bard.
Yeah, she was a tiefling bard warlock. She had taken that like celestial path warlock, and she was like...
Yeah, she came back with a little bit of the celestial thing.
She made a path with the light. Yeah.
At this point, when we came back from our time skip, wasn't it Unity?
I was going to share that as one of my fancy moments. But yeah, that happened like when we first came back, and we'll introduce you.
In just 2 seconds.
And then Ryan playing Geth Stormrider, a human paladin of Bahamut.
So then we get to the council, and we brought in our other characters.
You definitely can go over yours first, if you would like.
Holly decided to call her dad, who was the chief of their village. His name's Raffi Silverfang. He's also a ranger, but he's a different kind of ranger.
Yeah.
Holly's the kind of ranger that has a pet.
We haven't talked about Kuramaru! Oh, Kuramaru.
I picked him up in Phandalin during our first little bit.
She picked up what she thought was a wolf, and what she was happy to discover was actually a baby direwolf.
Yes.
He's real big.
The best boy! But Raffi is the kind that has a bunch of swords, and he's like an expert in all these other woodland things.
He was a hunter, and he specialized in like giant hunting, vampire hunting. He was like...
He liked to hunt, and he also would guide people to and from our village and civilization.
He was a expert tracker and a master woodsman.
So she called him, and then she also called her new husband, who she'd been friends with for a long time.
And she married during the time skip.
She called Asher, the Undying is his title.
Right. Yes. He has a fancy title because he's cool like that.
He's a fire Ganassi, or I think I played him as a human, but he was technically Ganassi human.
Yeah, we did a weird thing with variant human feats that gave him like some fire spells. He was basically like, he had fire elemental blood, but was a human.
But it wasn't strongly prominent.
Yeah.
It was a little prominent, but not very strong.
Right.
So he was like Ganassi light.
Yeah.
But
he had enough of the elemental in him.
Right.
He would have been a firebender if he was in the Avatar universe. No question.
He was a totem warrior barbarian?
No, I don't think you were totem. Were you? You were. Oh no, you had to be totem. Yeah.
He's like the strong silent type until he started really talking when he started being friends with Luciano.
Yes, who we'll get to. But, also another interesting fact about Asher.
Oh, he's an alchemist.
Yeah, he has I know that people stereotypically play barbarians as like the big dumb bruiser type characters, and we definitely have plenty of big dumb bruiser barbarians in this party. But he had an intelligence of like 13. It was like pretty decent. That's like
He's smart.
That's like a way above average IQ, I think. Works out too.
He would make potions for the group. He would make eventually when we started killing dragons, he would make breath like weapon potions out of them.
Oh yeah, we would harvest the organ that contained the element for dragon breath, and he would like use that as a ingredient in his potion so that we could fight further dragons with potions of resistance and potions of dragon breath of things they hated.
He knew a few different languages. He was like really just strong and smart, and
he was like definitely one of the nerdiest members of the party despite being the barbarian, which was always really interesting about him.
But those were my three: Holly, Raffi, Asher.
So I had previously played Kuromaru, of course, your direwolf companion, dearly beloved creature. And my characters at this point, Melisana, who actually wasn't present for the early part of the campaign, or for this part of the campaign, she was dealing with some like political stuff back in her homeland, and she actually sent a ward of the family that had been sent over from the continent. His father, who is a
piece of trash,
yeah, just like an ungodly piece of shit. He sent his son over to put some dignity and nobility into him because he was a petulant child, in his own words, and that was Kellen. So Kellen was
a half-elven.
He was a half elf. His father was an elf of high noble stature. His mother was a human noblewoman. They had a arranged marriage for political gain. And he was a storm sorcerer. He found very early in his life that the storm giant ancestry that his mother's bloodline claims descendants from gave him command over lightning, and he could kind of bend the air and heat to his whim and create illusions out of thin air. So he was a bit of a wild child and definitely didn't know how to use his powers at first, but he stuck with the group the whole time. So that was
we eventually traumatized him to a point where he was an adult.
Yeah, but the whole time he's just like, this is what being an action hero is like. Oh, right. What a charming, naive, sweet boy. But so that was Kellen. And then the last character was actually Melisana had gotten married as well during the time skip to her longtime partner and former pirate captain turned legal privateer for legal purposes.
For the purpose of marrying.
Yeah, in order to marry her, he had to stop his piracy.
At least illegally.
That was actually one of my long-time role-playing game in general, but also D&D characters. Luciano. He had a little bit of rogue to him, but he was a member of the now defunct Mystic class. They don't really use it. Wizards doesn't use it in their core gameplay anymore. They don't really consider Mystic a class because it was always kind of in playtest, but we used it. He had psychic powers. He could control water. He could do telekinesis. He could make himself more charming. He could
summon a water elemental.
He could summon a water elemental. He could when he woke up from a nice relaxing nap, he could tap into the psychic network of people's thoughts to teach himself random skills for a day that he didn't know he had. He was a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. A little bit of a dumbass, a little bit of a coward, but also, yeah, him and Holly butted heads a lot because whenever something didn't work out perfectly the way he planned it out, his next thought was, okay, should we consider running then maybe?
And Holly's response was normally, fuck you. If you want to run, go ahead, but no one else is going to follow you.
You gotta love that Holly was always there to knock a little bit of sense into everyone in that group. Just tell it like you mean it. That was her signature weapon.
Oh yeah, being blunt.
Yep, no bullshit. But yeah, so those were my characters. Pick one of the other three. You get to decide.
Let's see. Sean.
Sure.
Had Lundquist. But he also had Petra.
Oh yes, beloved Petra.
At the end of our first campaign, while we were still in Phandalin, Lundquist got married to Petra, one of his old buddies. I can't believe we haven't said it yet, but she and him and a group that he was a part of before as per why he ended up getting on the ship and getting kidnapped in the first place, because he was in a depressive state. They ended up killing Lundquist's first family.
Yes. So, I will clear his name now. Lundquist is a good and gentle soul who means no harm except to those he wishes to harm. Usually they deserved it. Sometimes he was drunk. But in this case, he had returned with his squad from a mission. There was a mad mage who was messing around with people in the town. He actually used very powerful illusion magic on their warband as they walked through the town gates. And this illusion magic caused them to see all of the townspeople as the members of the Orcish tribe who lived in the northern mountains that they were at war with.
Yes.
So they thought that their town was overrun and started attacking all of the orcs they saw, and only after it wore off did they realize that
they had run home to try and ward off the orcs in Lundquist's home, but they actually had killed his first wife, and so he basically got shunned. Him and Petra stuck together. A bunch of the rest of the group spread because
one of them ran south, changed his identity for a while, and then ended up repenting for his crimes by joining the Order of the Gauntlet, and we met him later.
Yes. The other one went crazy, thought his god had betrayed him, and ran off into the woods, and we never saw him again. But the other one was Petra.
It was actually Barash.
Oh, was it Barash?
Yeah, it was Barash. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
That was he did go crazy, but ended up that was Dave's second character. We ended up meeting him later, but he basically didn't really remember much of anybody, and he was hearing visions from a god that didn't exist. He was mental. He was a crackpot after that at that point.
But anyway, Petra was the other person in the group with him, and she followed him basically to the ends of the earth while he was drinking his sorrows away. They ended up trying to get on a ship somewhere else, walked willingly onto the kidnapper's ship.
Mm-hmm.
And then this whole hullabaloo happened. Petra ended up getting separated from Lundquist while we were on the island that sank.
Yeah.
But she got off herself and then tracked him down.
Yeah, she ended up sneaking into a goblin encampment and stole one of the goblins' boat and then just took off herself because she's crafty and a genius.
She's very good.
We love her.
But she tracked Lundquist down, they got married, and then he called Petra in to be his second on the council. And then his third...
Oh, Petra was what?
Oh, she was a halfling who had Aragonasi blood, but it wasn't prevalent whatsoever. She was just a halfling.
Yeah, she had
an odd
ancestry,
appearance.
But she was a halfling with blue and white striped hair.
She was a halfling rogue.
Yeah, she was an assassin. She was a professional assassin. Did real good work in their military before they had to flee.
And then who was the second character at that point? It was Fernir?
At that point, he played. At the time, we knew the character as Ezreal.
Oh, Ezreal.
He went through a lot of spiritual reawakenings throughout different points in times.
I'm pretty sure Ezreal became Fernir because he changed his name after he died.
Right.
We went on... Ezreal was a human druid who was technically a Satanist?
In a vague term, he was part of a...
He appreciated death.
Yeah, he was a part of a death cult of pagan... Plus, they were pagan, but they also had a fascination with dark gods and death gods,
right?
And so it was a very corrupted kind of almost demonic paganism.
Mm-hmm.
But he was part of a group with that they worshipped and saw death as the pinnacle of the cycle of life.
And so he ended up dying at one point. And yes. I know this because Holly was with him. There was a point where our group split up, and Ezreal at the moment was with Holly. He died, and I didn't know what to do with his body because I didn't want it to get possessed or anything weird. So I locked him in a what is it?
It was basically a dumpster.
It was kind of like a dumpster, but it was
it was pretty much a dumpster.
It was the thing where you put your eggshells and bananas.
It was a compost heap, yeah.
I locked him in there, so that we could come back for his body in like an hour when we were leaving, and we could like try and bring him back.
Right.
But when I came back, he was already alive again, and he adopted a new name, Fernir.
Yeah.
Which I don't think he got rid of at the end of the campaign.
No.
He was just Fernir.
Yeah. So he became a revenant. He basically like made a deal with a dark goddess because he didn't know. Like he met a goddess of death, and she said, you have an important job to do. I need to send you back for when your job is done. He signed a contract
that once his mission was finished, he would die.
Right.
But then he took up Fernir as his name.
Yes, because actually, if I correct me if I'm wrong on this, Sean, but if I remember correctly, we had talked about that Fernir was his given birth name. Mm-hmm. He adopted the name Ezreal when his druidic cult was destroyed by the Cult of the Dragon. Mm-hmm. His master's name was Ezreal. Oh. And his master was killed, and he adopted his master's name.
So when he got killed, he took his own name back.
Yeah, when he got killed. And it was hilarious because, like, I don't think Sean was thinking about it. He was just like, well, I'm a new me, and I'm, like, reborn, so I'm not really who I was saying I was, and I should probably put that out in the open. He was just kind of, like, opening up to us in an emotional moment after his death, but he didn't realize that when he signed the document with the death goddess to be like he signed his name Ezreal. And yeah, so
he could have loopholed his way.
Right, exactly.
Anyway, so those were Sean's characters of the time. He eventually ended up, Petra was pregnant from the time skip or something like that.
Right.
So she ended up getting retired halfway through, and he picked up Sven.
Sven, yeah.
Which was one of the orcs that was actually warring with his tribe that we mentioned earlier?
Yes, he had a very strong hatred of the man known as Stieg Lundquist.
Which is funny because he joined our group so that he could keep tabs on Lundquist, but then halfway through kind of fucking forgot all about it and ended just like being buddies with everybody.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to join these guys and help them out because I have nothing better to do, and also, like, maybe I can corner that Lundquist guy and I can take his head off, or, his tribe, like, or his clan, like, ruined my tribe and killed my people.
And he was an orc barbarian fighter?
He was mostly fighter. He had a couple of levels in barbarian, but he was primarily, like, a trained, heavy armor, big axe-wielding fighter.
But, like, he went through the first little arc with him. He was, like, really, really angry. He, like, hated everybody, especially Lundquist.
Yeah.
He was only here to kill Lundquist. And then, like, very slowly realized he liked us. And and we were nice to him most of the time after a while.
We melted his frozen heart.
And so he decided he wanted to stay in the group and not just to kill us because he was, like, having a good time.
Yeah.
So that was...
It helped that we gave him a lot of free therapy.
Yes, it was. Especially Suno, which we will get to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go through the next few characters. We've been doing an hour.
That's true, yeah.
It's a lot of characters, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so... the next characters, we'll go through Kyle's characters next, since he was part of the main group from the beginning.
I was going to let you do his, because I was going to try and explain the whole Unity Callista thing, but then I was like, it's Ken's thing, you go ahead.
Okay, so Unity was Kyle's second character after Callista. We had actually met Unity before the council at this point. When our party returned to get back onto this original mission, we thought that we had met back up with our dearly beloved old friend Callista, but in reality, it was actually her twin sister who was disguising herself as Callista because something had happened to her sister she was going to go looking for. They ended up finding Callista very early on, but... basically, the two of them were twins. They grew up in kind of an abusive household, to say the least. Unity was actually, she was the more, like, where Callista was, like, the goody two-shoes. She was the gentle type. She loved life. She loved stories of heroes. She was very attached to the light. Unity was very much, like, a child of the underworld, a child of darkness, a child of sadness.
She was a tiefling rogue.
She was a tiefling rogue. She was a swashbuckler rogue. Yep. And she was mostly skilled with investigation and assassination. And then we had Kyle's third character, the officially declared undisputed strongest member of the Wyrmtamers. A Kelkallan barbarian with a little bit of fighter. He had a little bit of classical weapon training, but otherwise he was a human barbarian. Satanta, the Hound.
Mm-hmm.
He was a child in a small village, like maybe a couple dozen people living in the woods on either your island or a different island.
I actually am not 100% sure, which you think I might be, because he was best friends with Raffi.
Right.
But to my knowledge, I'm not 100% sure where he came from, but he, as a young man,
Yeah.
found his way onto uh, my island.
Yeah.
And he met Raffi in the woods.
Yeah.
And decided to get teachings from Raffi. And so he spends a lot of time in Kelkala.
Right.
But is not natively Kelkallan.
Right.
Which is the village that
and
Holly and Raffi are from.
Yes, also specifically not from Highport, which is your island.
I think he came from a different island.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think we ever specified what island it was. It didn't matter because his village was destroyed. But basically, Satanta's origin story was he was a scrawny, sickly young boy. He witnessed his town being utterly destroyed by pirates, orcish and goblin raiders, and not being able to do anything. He pleaded and wished for help with the situation, and actually a fae princess appeared to him and offered him a boon of great strength, the strength that he needed to destroy his foes. He grew big, massive, strong, tall muscles and incredible weapon skills and the power to control his rage for good and for like shows of great strength. And he managed to wipe out all of the invading pirates on his own, and now with a new, very large, very muscular human form, just kind of wandered off seeking greater adventure and seeking to one day re-meet that fairy priestess who had princess, sorry, who had granted him that boon. So he was friends with Raffi specifically and a bunch of the other Kelkallans. He was affectionately referred to by
Uncle Tonti.
Yeah, as Uncle Tonti.
Because Holly has a brother who is in a completely different campaign, and it's a whole different story. He doesn't show up in our campaign,
right?
But he would always call Satanta Uncle Tonti.
Yes.
Because while he's not our
brother.
Yes. Yeah. Because we're not he's not our blood related uncle, but we saw him so often and he was around so much that he could have been our uncle.
Right.
So he was Uncle Tonti.
So that was Satanta, the undisputed champion of the Wyrmtamers. And then that leaves Ryan's characters. Mm-hmm. Did you want to go back and forth?
Sure. I want to do see or no.
Okay, cool. Then I'll start. We already saw Geth. So the next character that he brought in was a nobleman named Lem Ironcloak. His family was part of the Ironcloak noble family. They were in charge of a major bridge and some of the farming fields on the outskirts of that bridge in the western heartlands section of the Sword Coast, if anyone is familiar with it. It's around the Golden Fields, which is where Geth is from, and his little farming village was destroyed by the cultists. Lem's family was responsible for protecting that region. Him and Geth had a little bit of a nasty rivalry because Geth saw Lem and his family as being too incompetent to protect the region when the cultists came, and cowering and hiding in their tower.
He was wrong.
Well, yeah. Holly and Lem despise each other, and you would never give him the benefit of the doubt. But Lem himself was furious. Eventually, his own family's tower was destroyed and lost to the invading forces, and their family was forced to relocate. He struck out on his own after making a deal with a particularly powerful entity whom his father had been associated with in the past, and he used that fiendish deal to draw power and learn magic and swordsmanship and grow ever stronger in his desire desire to unseat this cult and return his family to their rightful place as nobles with the divine right to rule. Very like lawful evil-esque, like noblesse oblige kind of character. And he was a human with who was also a pact of the fiend, pact of the blade warlock. So he was a swordsman, basically like a swordsman with magical abilities, who had made a pact with a powerful devil named Belial, and Belial gave and Belial took, but Lem sought to use whatever gifts Belial would give him to further his own goals, which happened to align with yours.
Sometimes. And the last character, so he has Geth, Lem, and then Cyrano. Cyrano was amazing.
Oh, Cyrano. What a sweet, gentle boy.
Cyrano was a wizard human, wasn't he? Half elf.
He's a half elf, yeah.
Half elf wizard. Who was kind of mentally unstable. Because
he's seen some shit.
He was one of the only other people in our party who had a previous adventuring group. And they were in a bar celebrating a victory or something, some kind of small thing, and the entire bar got torched.
It wasn't quite that.
No?
They were actually on the road. They had stopped off at a tavern. They headed off on the road that evening, and they ended up getting attacked, and their cart, like a bunch of his party members got killed. And their bodies were just left there. And the cart toppled over, and it crushed Sariel, their party's necromancer, and smashed his legs. So he couldn't move, and he couldn't lift the cart off from under him. So he just kind of sat there
with their bodies for days.
With their corpses all around him, and no one could find them because they were in the middle of the woods.
So he ended up becoming a necromancer kind of wizard.
He kind of started like talking to them and like seeing their ghosts and stuff, but he was a very like childish, naive character.
But that's the thing too, is regardless of like that mental break happened and he was just eternally happy. You'd think that he'd like just be insane and like potentially angry or like mad, but he was actually just happy all the time. And I actually have it written down in my notes. Eventually it ends up being, because we were talking in our group before we went and did the big battle, that anybody that wanted to not go could just not go, because if you're gonna go just kill yourself, like you don't have to, like if you have better things to live for, you don't have to do this. And Cyrano like was like, the only reason that he's living and the only reason that he's with us right now is because he cares about us and he wants us to live like his other party didn't.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my god.
Yeah. Like he was like, despite how miserable of a backstory that is for him and how traumatic that experience was, he was a jovial, happy-go-lucky, bouncy prankster all the time.
He's very adorable. Yeah. Very sweet.
Definitely saw his friends' ghosts in everything and like would turn and talk to them and have full-length conversations that none of us could understand because his friends like were not there.
You think?
Kind of, but like sometimes little things would happen that made you go like, wait a minute, is Sariel there?
Which is fun because he went out of his way in the end before the war. He went out of his way to become friends with Asher.
Oh yes.
By trying to help him deal with some of his trauma, which never really worked.
Right.
But that's fine. He appreciated the effort after he was done being dunked in the water. And they ended up being friends, and Cyrano, because of his naive nature, kind of got tricked into like making a few weird little mistakes, trying to bring his friends back to life.
A few weird little mistakes, like maybe accidentally awakening an ancient lich.
Yes. Yeah. Which we stopped.
He didn't know he was doing anything wrong. He thought he was helping.
He thought he was helping.
Sweet
and
boy.
Like potentially bringing his friends back. And then Asher was like, dude, if you want to bring your friends back to life, why don't you talk to a druid?
Yeah, they can like literally make new bodies and put their souls in them. And he was like, why didn't I think of that?
Because Asher grew up around druids and he knows what they can do, and Cyrano did not. But he was like, just talk to Fernir. Like, don't talk to Fernir,
like,
please.
He literally is like, he like worshipped a death cult. He like, if anyone can like knows how to solve death. It's probably him.
Yeah, and eventually Ferner ended up bringing his friends back.
Reincarnating them over the course of a week-long ritual spell and giving them new, completely random bodies. His elven companion Sariel, who he was close to, who was a necromancer, and he actually learned a little bit of necromancy and learned actually all of his necromancy like from her.
She came back as a tabaxi.
She came back as like a Black Panther tabaxi. She had like the dark fur, like the like strong cat-like body. She's just like, okay, I guess I'm this now. But yeah, the other interesting thing about Cyrano, they were low-leveled when they were together. He actually was a bard who traveled with them, and then after his friends died, he took up wizardry so he could learn necromancy.
I remember that because in the end, Callista and Cyrano worked together to... There's a long thing I'm not really going to get into too hard right this very second.
Yeah.
But Holly got herself into some trouble. And after the war, she was supposed to basically pay for it by going on trial. And Cyrano and Callista used magic for storytelling. They like made a picture and like did the voices for what actually happened.
Right.
And basically cleared her name like right then and there in the middle of our celebration party.
Yeah.
And that was the best thing. They were giving everybody rewards for defeating Tiamat, which, spoiler warning, we defeated Tiamat.
Woo! They're alive, so you should probably have guessed.
And when Asher got called up for his reward, they were like, do you want this large chunk of money or do you want a wish? And he's like, I mean, like, I think a few people were, like, deciding to take both, and they were, like, allowing it to happen, because, I mean, we killed a fucking god, so it's like, yeah, take the money and a wish, like, what do you...
Yeah, it was like, well, they were gonna offer you, like, a large boon, and they're like, can I just, like, take the money, and also, like, did I earn enough clout to get a small favor? And then someone on the council who they had become really, really close to was like, okay, I'll personally
help you with it. But,
they were convincing.
It was the best part, because Asher went up for his thing, and they were like, so what do you want? And he was like, maybe don't kill my wife.
Maybe don't put her on trial for something. It was an accident. Oopsie, whoopsie.
But anyway, so we spent the first hour talking about the characters. So everyone knows the characters and a good amount of the story.
Right, some of our favorite moments, yeah.
We're going to go over some of our favorite moments my favorite moments that I wrote down.
I have a couple of things that are kicking around in my head that I'll see if you bring them up. Yeah. And then also I have a couple of like fun little behind-the-scenes stories that are things that, especially for any members of my party who are listening to the podcast right now, there may be some things that you don't know because they were part of my secret notes, and you guys may have never done those things, so you didn't know they were happening behind the scenes.
Plus, I do have, like, if we're going to go over time, I might spend, like, at least 5 minutes at the end finding weird little quotes, because I do have quotes of things characters said.
Quotes list, yes. If any of the podcasts are going to go over time, it's this one.
Okay.
We're very excited about this. If you couldn't tell.
My first favorite was my first Nat 20 during the very first game.
You remember that?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, what's the story?
This one I didn't even write down in my notebook, because I didn't start my notebook until maybe 3/4 of the way through this campaign.
Oh, shit, you're right. Wow.
But this one I just remember offhand, because it was my first Nat 20. It was during our first episode. And it was with the heavy crossbow I picked up.
Oh, yep.
We were watching orcs and goblins basically go to war on that island that sank.
Yeah.
And we kind of waited it out, and they eventually started just killing each other off to where there was only a few.
Oh, you were in that valley where the two sides were at war, and you were on the upper level? Oh, yeah,
But eventually, one of the goblins saw us, and so I just took aim and shot him, and I got a nat 20, and I popped his head.
Yep.
And I was like, this is amazing!
Yeah, because that was the thing. Is like, and like, that moment, I'm glad that you brought that up, because now I remember that vividly. Because, like, that moment was like you, by this point, like, you kind of were getting a rhythm for the game. I had put you through a combat because you fought that, like, last surviving drunken pirate.
The captain?
Halfgrist, who was just, like, wandering around on the beach, like, drunk out of his mind, convinced he was going to die there, and, like, in a stupor. You stole his crossbow. It was his crossbow.
Yeah.
You stole his crossbow, and you guys took him down, And after taking him down, you kind of headed out into the encampment, and you kind of like, you knew combat, you knew exploration, you kind of were testing what you could do with the dice. And then that goblin saw you, and he ran at your group with like a short sword and wearing armor, and he had a shield, and you're all like in like wet rags, covered in like filth and debris, and like beaten up, and your arms were like wrapped up. You'd been chained, so you still had like heavy chains in your arms. You guys were in a really bad spot. You're just like, I have to make this shot count, and you rolled that 20. And it was just kind of like simultaneously like, what does that mean? And also like did I win? Like, it was like that look of like, oh my god, like it's like the light bulbs went off, the fireworks were hitting, and you're just like, I got him.
Yeah.
And that was like that's always a fun moment when you realize like oh, I get to do like a bajillion damage. And yeah, like you dealt like double his health in one shot, so his head just burst, like that instantly killed him. And you're just like, huh, problem solved. I pressed the button and it's dead.
The second thing I wrote down, or maybe not the second, but the biggest thing that I wrote down on this page was bloodfish.
Oh, Lundquist and Holly's war cry.
Lundquist and Holly, the dwarven monk, and my character Holly, who I'll refer to a million times.
Yeah, the human ranger, for those of you who don't know.
Became very good friends.
The gruesome twosome.
And we ended up having to pair between a few different boats in twos at one point, and Holly and Kurumaru and Lundquist went together in the boat.
Yeah, and you stuffed your dire wolf and the dwarf into a boat with you, and it was like real cramped.
And we decided that every boat needed a team name. I don't think anyone else
No one else picked a name. Everyone was like, okay, you kids have fun.
But we came up
and we kept rowing.
We came up with bloodfish, and so the entire way across the river, we're just like, bloodfish, bloodfish, bloodfish.
I think there were like piranhas in the water or something, so you were like, yeah, bloodfish.
So we, throughout the rest of the campaign, referred to the three of us. Sometimes we would be like, it's just us two, and we're like trying to make like group decisions, air quotes, because it was two of us, so it wasn't really a huge group.
Right.
And he'd be like, well, I mean, I want to do this, and you want to do this, so it's unanimous. We're just going to have to either do it or not. And I'm like, no, Kurumaru gets a vote.
Yeah.
Because he's bloodfish.
Yep. Team bloodfish. WWBD. What would bloodfish do?
But that was so fun. I love bloodfish. It's so good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't think we mentioned this. Well, we kind of like hinted. I don't think we actually said it. You were a Beastmaster Ranger,
yes,
which is why you had me.
Which is why I had Kurumaru. What's the second thing I wrote down?
More fun quotes.
The time that so there was another subgroup in our group. And
oh yes,
we were called the Bash Bros.
The Bash Bros.
It was
manly men doing manly things.
Satanta Raffi, Lundquist, Kellen, and Geth.
Skinny baby boy. Yeah, we had the big beefy human paladin, the big beefy barbarian, the like strong, wise, fatherly ranger. He was definitely like the wise dad. He was the elder of the group. He like kept us all focused.
He was also a badass though.
Raffi was like by far like. All of us, like, it's Dungeons & Dragons. Everyone has a wisdom score. Some of us have a low wisdom score. Some of us have a high wisdom score. Raffi was the personification of wisdom. He was the one who took his wisdom score and elevated it to entirely new levels of insight and, like, single-handedly responsible for diffusing group conflicts by dispensing wisdom. And by that point, like, you had role-played him in such a, like, you put him in that position as, like, the wise, like, Uncle Iroh style elder for the party, that like if Raffi was like, hold on, you guys aren't doing this right, here's what I think we should do, everyone was just like, well, that's that then. Like, no one was ever mad about it, because if Raffi said it was the right idea, he's probably right about it. The man's never wrong.
But I wrote down as my second or third-ish favorite, the time the Bash Bros beat up that kid for being a pompous ass.
Oh my god.
We were in Waterdeep, and this little rich snob of a kid, he was like a teenager, not a child.
He was like a young, he was like 20, he was like 21, I think.
He had his lackeys beating poor people in the street.
Yeah, there was a shopkeeper. He was a 57-year-old human man who worked in the fish markets, and he like like was emptying out a bucket of like fish guts into the alleyway, and the guy was walking through with his posse, and the fish guts got too close to his nicely polished shoes, and so he had his lackeys kick the shit out of the guy.
Yeah.
And you found him while you were walking through the town.
While
the
he
guy
was doing it.
half unconscious with a bloody lip on the ground.
Well, that was the best thing too, is because we talked to him briefly.
Yeah.
And then I'm pretty sure it was Geth who was like, "We don't have time for this," because I'm pretty sure we were going to do something else.
Yes.
So he wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
We did have something else important to do.
We were tracking a spy who was potentially infiltrated the council.
But he was like, "So we don't have time to go take care of this poor guy. Like, I'm sorry it happened. We're gonna heal you, but like, we can't figure out who did this and like go chase him." But like, Satanta and Raffi like looked at each other and then just ran. Yeah. We're like, "We're getting him," and so they went and they actually. Raffi made a whirlwind around the kid.
Oh, yeah, because Raffi could cast Wind Wall.
And Satanta was inside of it with him and threatened him so badly and scared him so badly, he actually shit himself.
Yes. Yeah. That was a very good intimidation check and a very scared little baby boy.
We scared him so bad that he actually shit. And then Raffi actually sent him home with a note pinned to his lapel.
Yeah.
Like, he wrote a note out to his parents.
Yeah.
And pinned it to him and was like, "You take that home to your dad, and if he's got a problem with anything we did today, I will talk to him." Mm-hmm. Basically like a fucking teacher.
Yeah.
Never heard from them though.
Yeah, and actually, that's part of the some of the background story that I have. That's a lot behind the scenes. So I had a whole plan for them if you guys had spent a little bit more time in the town. But the next mission that each of your group had gone off of, you went very far away from Waterdeep. Mm-hmm. So during the time that it was relevant, you weren't really in town. But his mother, who was extremely overprotective of her darling baby boy, who could do no wrong. She like barged her way to Castle Waterdeep and like knocked on the council chambers and was like, "One of your ruffian soldiers accosted my son," where she was promptly turned around by Open Lord Laeral Silverhand and told to go back home, and they would deal with the problem. She never mentioned it to you because no one fucking cares. But that boy's father, actually, she was trying to continue to press the issues. Like, no one said anything. There was no justice given. The man is not in jail for what he did to my son. He understood his son to be an arrogant, pompous ass who needed a lesson. So he sat his boy aside and said, "Hey, listen, I just want you to know that I wholeheartedly support everything that group of adventurers did to you. And if you ever go around beating the shit out of like the people that you as a noble are sworn to uphold and protect, then I will be the one to do it next time." And you never saw him again because he got a stern talking to from his father. But if you had stayed in town for a little bit longer, his mother was going to come find you and give you a stern talking to and demand for your arrest. Which probably wouldn't have gone very well at all.
Oh, I'm sure that would have gone swimmingly.
Yeah, that council was
like,
they're kind of helping us fight a war against a demon god cult. So you can probably take your problems and shove them up your ass.
The thing is I bet you Raffi would have dealt with that very eloquently.
Of course.
Holly wouldn't have.
No. Holly would have shot him.
If she was around, she would just fucking have pinned her to the ground and been like, "Why don't you follow us?"
Yeah. You can deal with the problem. If you can't, then it's not that big of a deal, then is it?
Try beating me up.
Mm-hmm. Good luck.
Try.
Yep.
I'd love to see you try.
Your son clearly believes that just because he has power, that means he can do whatever he wants to people. So yeah, so I'm gonna do what I want. And if you're strong enough, you can stop me. And if you're not,
then maybe you'll go home with a bloody nose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
she
anyway.
was very like no bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Holly did not care about no bullshit.
Classic Holly.
One of my other favorites.
No,
I probably would get shit for it too. Was when we had our tournament.
Oh, yep. Mm-hmm.
We were going through a big war, and so the city thought it was a good idea to make them feel protected and also kind of like raise their spirits.
Yeah.
To make the Wyrmtamers go through a tournament between all of them to display their power and like get people amped for the fight.
Yeah, like these are the heroes who are fighting to protect you from the cult of the dragons.
One of my favorite moments was when Asher broke Lem's arms
Oh.
on his birthday.
Oh my god. We didn't know it was Lem's birthday in game until after the fight was over, but you snapped his arms like a pair of twigs. You were a barbarian with your strength was like 23 or some stupid shit like that.
Asher got a belt of
Frost Giant strength.
So he was already strong, but he was much stronger than he already was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And
for those of you who don't know D&D, what is considered to be the pinnacle of human physical strength, so like the world record, like greatest bodybuilder on the planet, would probably have a strength score of 20. So 23 means he's literally superhuman strong. We're talking like not quite the Hulk, but not that far off.
So he, in the tournament, eventually got pinned up against Lem, and they went to go fight, and Asher knew that Lem had been on Holly's nerves for a long time, and that he had that he'd been giving her grief.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that went into that we probably don't have the time to go into everything.
Yes. So Asher also knew that most of his strength and like the way that he could really fight Asher back was with his arms for spells and sword fighting.
Yes, he was a swordsman who needed a hand free to cast spells.
So he grappled him, got his arms, put his foot on his back, and basically just popped the arms out of the socket.
Yep.
I guess he didn't like snap the arms, he just pulled them out of the socket. Not broken, but very painful.
Yes.
And I think Holly ended up healing Lem afterward. She got really excited.
You had healing magic.
Yes, I had
healing spirit.
Yes. So I was very excited to see him get his arms broken, but after he was like sulking after the match, Holly was like, "Okay, like that's enough. Like, I don't want you to have to go and either get them like snapped back in physically." Or
that was a fun one because he had to use several rounds of that fight, just like using vampiric touch, like flailing his broken noodle arms around and slapping you with a vampiric touch, so he could actually drain enough of your life force to like fix his injury.
Fixing his arms.
He was able to fix one arm and then kind of like had an actual chance to keep draining.
Well, that's the thing too.
Lucky with a little broken arm swing, little noodle jab.
Even with the broken arms, like Asher ended up winning, but the fight was really good.
Yeah, it was very close. Lots of back and forth, like lots of ooh, who's gonna win moments.
As much as Holly doesn't like Lem, Hannah thought that fight was amazing.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorites, honestly.
Well, especially because I'm pretty sure, even with the broken arms, I think that was the fight, or it might not have been.
No, it was.
I think that was the fight where Lem got Asher down to 0.
Right.
But like he had just gotten the feature where when he goes to 0, he can make a save, and if he's above a number, then he can come back, and then the number rises every time he goes below 0. So it's harder to beat.
It's basically how he got his title. Well, like he had it before, but his title of Asher the Undying. He literally like if he would go unconscious, his like inner rage and fire would keep him going. So you'd make a check, a Constitution saving throw. If you succeeded, future checks would get harder and you'd go to 1. And then he hit you again and you rolled and you just kept nailing it. Like he like landed the finishing blow and you're just like, I'm not giving up.
And he'd come back and then Lem would get him again and then he'd come back and then Lem would get him again and he came back and it was so fucking
You were like
good.
On the knife's edge of unconsciousness for a solid like 30 seconds of that fight. Like just back and forth, like swinging relentlessly at each other nonstop, and you just kept like passing out and then snapping back in.
So as infuriating as that probably was for Ryan, and Lem, fucking amazing.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorite fights.
What else is on here? I wrote how Holly killed the blue dragon.
Near the end of the campaign.
Because I have it written down. Holly killed that blue dragon with a slaying arrow. But Dragon Satanta Slayer takes the credit for it, which I am in love with. And I love this tidbit especially because Holly's child, Ivy, who actually has a problem with Holly for the most part.
Right.
actually believes that Satanta did it instead, and that Holly did it.
Well, because he took your flying broom and he chased after the dragon, and you sat on the ground and were like peppering it with Dragon Slayer arrows.
Satanta and Holly killed it together. Holly just got the finishing blow.
Right.
And Satanta got down. He's like, you see how I killed it?
Yeah.
And
he's like, oh, you see how I beat that dragon? Like I beat him at his own game. I was up in the air.
And Holly was like, sure. And so to this day, he takes the credit for it. And even Ivy, who will hear the story, she's like, Mom, really?
Yeah, like you really think you killed that thing? I mean, have you seen him? He's a fucking monster. Like he's the one that killed the dragon.
He took your broom, but my God, you didn't kill it. Fuck off.
He also broke your broom. He flew straight into the dragon's face on a broom made out of it was a broom. It was a flying broom, but it was a broom. It was made out of wood and
whatever fiber you used to clean it.
Yeah. And the dragon just blasted a straight up lightning bolt from his. The blue dragons can breathe lightning, for those who aren't as familiar with D&D. He just blasted a straightforward lightning bolt straight through Satanta and the broom just up in flames instantly.
I have stealing the necklace on there, but we already went over that.
We already did stealing the necklace, yeah.
Killing the dragon, the green dragon in the very beginning, because
Venom thing,
that was a combo Holly Lundquist kill.
Yeah.
Where Lundquist, the dragon kept trying to fly away, and Lundquist kept getting its tail and slamming it to the ground.
Yeah.
And so it couldn't get away.
Those grapple checks were nuts.
And I'm pretty sure the final blow was a combination between my arrow and his slamming it.
Yes.
So that was the beginning of the not the beginning of the friendship, because we were friends before that. Right. But that was just
that was when you realized these two actually he holds it in place and you shoot it from 200 feet away because you're a sharpshooter.
Oh god. Cyrano giving Raffi the talking scarf for Christmas.
Oh my god, the Christmas gifts. The scarf. It showed up in sparing moments, because a lot of times, I will admit, I kind of forgot about it.
Right.
But when it did show up,
it was always a fucking amazing moment. Mm-hmm. So Cyrano, like we told you before, is kind of nuts, but also hilarious.
Yeah.
So I have no idea where he got this scarf from. If he made it,
I think he had it enchanted.
If he had it enchanted,
yeah.
But we, before the battle, we were trying to raise each other's spirits, because it was around holiday time.
Yeah, it was in-game Christmas.
And so we did a gift exchange between our group, and Cyrano gave Raffi a scarf, and he was like, okay, but the one real stipulation with me giving you the gift is I want you to wear it and I don't want you to ever take it off. And he's like, okay, he's like, no, I need you to promise me you'll never take it off. And he thought he was being almost like a child, where he's like, no, I got this for you. You never take it off.
It's a special gift.
And he's like, okay, I promise I'll never take it off. And Raffi's one for a promise. So he's like, okay, I'll always wear it.
I'm going to be honest about it.
And so he put it on, and the fucking scarf spoke. And the thing about it is it always talks at the most inopportune moment and says the stupidest crap.
Yep. It just says really embarrassing or off something really serious would happen, and the scarf will just make a joke about it when it's like somebody just died, and the scarf will be ooh, I guess we should start making funeral plans.
It's oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, like a kid gets kidnapped and they're just yeah, you could always make another one.
Another one of my favorites was Asher intimidating Grumpf Banery.
Oh yeah, Grumpf is he's a I'll shortly talk about him, but Grumpf is a very famous character in Dungeons and Dragons, and specifically the Forgotten Realms lore. He's a dark elven archmage, one of the most powerful diviners in the world, and he happened to be at the time working with a organization called the Arcane Brotherhood, which was a organization of neutral to evil aligned mages who had a vested interest in stopping the cult of Tiamat, so they were working with you, albeit a little bit begrudgingly, and he was one of their representatives on the council, and a lot of people had a lot of problems with him, and Holly especially.
Mm-hmm. that wasn't a very like written out moment. But the one thing that I really like too that kind of solidifies Raffi as like this crazy badass.
Yeah, Raffi didn't like him a lot either.
Well, no, it didn't have anything to do with Gromp.
Right.
They were on a mission, and Raffi was looking between ships because earlier on we talked about how Holly's brother Rowan, was around.
Right.
He went missing, and he had gone on a ship, and so Raffi was looking for the ship. And he ended up getting captured by a pirate crew who tied him up on a barrel in their underneath their ship.
Yeah, he went alone, like didn't tell the group where he was going, and then went and then got captured, and it was like, oh no.
But he ended up kicking his way out of the situation and killed the entire crew while tied to a barrel.
Yep.
Because he had knives in his shoes.
Because he thought at one point he was just like, I think I should probably get hidden knives installed in my boots, because what if I end up in a situation where I can't use my hands? That sounds like an insightful and smart thing to do. And he literally saved his own life doing that.
Yep.
Months later, because he's a genius who understands how to solve problems. Fucking Raffi.
And a few other things that I guess is a little less my character centric. Not exactly, but a little. Something else that I realized reading my notes was that at one point randomly, Unity was holding Papyrus.
She was, yeah. It was at one point when just to for the kids' protection, because we were worried about some of our homelands, because the cult started to drop hints that they kind of knew where we lived and where we were from. We moved all of our children, who we had gotten married, and some of our characters had kids. Luciana.
Papyrus is Holly's son.
Yeah, Papyrus and Ivy were Holly and Asher's twins. At that point, Blaze and Blair, Petra and Lundquist's twins, were born. And
Arya was born.
And Arya, who was Melisana and Luciano's daughter. So they were all babies. They were between 1 and 3 years old. We had them in a nursery that we had installed in our guild house,
which we had built on Waterdeep property, because
on the outskirts of the city walls,
because it had that mythal that protected from dragons. So we're so if anyone's going to get attacked by dragons, it's not going to be here.
Yeah, because dragons couldn't fly within I think 3 miles of the city.
So we got them
without permission.
Yes, so we got them in there. But at one point, randomly, I was hanging out with the kids, and she came in to talk to me or something like that, and she just started holding Papyrus, and I was like, okay, that's weird, but also neat.
I'm pretty sure Unity had an affinity for children because she had a bad childhood.
Right. There was also a different time where we end up going to Calcala in the midst of the war.
Oh yeah.
And she started talking to a bunch of other children and trying to teach them things, which was just something I noticed, is that Unity really liked kids.
Yeah, she has a soft spot for children. I think it's because she wanted her and Callista to have a normal childhood, but their parents were very scummy, manipulative people. And so I think that she had a soft spot for kids, and especially wanting kids to grow up and make the best of themselves.
And another thing I actually didn't notice, and I don't know if Ryan did it on purpose or if it was just something that I put too much stock into.
Sure.
That Geth was very invested in Holly's well-being.
He was, yeah. I don't know if I know why.
The thing is they didn't usually have too much interaction unless Holly was hurt.
Right.
So I went through all of my notes, and I was reading about it, and at one point, this isn't on my favorites list because it wasn't my favorite,
right?
But Holly ends up getting killed.
Yeah.
We call it the poop monster.
Yeah. For those of you who are familiar with classic Dungeons and Dragons lore, it was an Atyug. We split up the party to explore parts of an old ruined swamp castle. She fell down the stairs into a pit of muck, feces, and refuse that the Atyug was living in, and then had to fight it on her own, and it killed her.
Because I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't even have Kuromaro with me.
No one could hear you yelling because you were on the opposite side of the castle.
No, they heard me yell.
Oh, right, but they were really far away.
So it took them a while to get there.
A couple minutes to reach you.
But the thing pierced me through the center and killed me.
Yeah, and sent tentacles straight through the center of your gut and out your spine.
Geth was the first one on the scene. Mm-hmm. And, everyone was going, but he was the first one in front.
Right.
And he was the one to pull my limp body off of it.
Yes.
And then he was the one that brought me over to
Barash.
Yeah. And told him to heal me. And then he brought me back begrudgingly.
Yeah, he like waited until the last possible minute to use his resurrection spell because they were a little bit like they weren't newer to adventuring. They've been adventuring for a while, but they weren't particularly powerful at that point. So he couldn't like bring people back from the dead. It just if you had died less than a minute ago, he could shove your soul back into your body real quick and heal up the wounds like on the surface. The internal damage was still bad.
Right, so I was on a timer, and he had to mull over whether he wanted to save me or not.
Is it worth it? He waited until like he had like 6 seconds left to bring her back, and he's
then
like,
he brought
"All
me back.
right."
But that was the thing too, is I didn't really think too much of it until I was reading my notebook, and I actually didn't think about it until I was reading it just recently.
Mhm.
That when there was, this is all my favorite moments.
Yeah.
Holly, there's a lady named Halia that I hated.
Halia Thornton. Yep.
And I end up killing her.
After a long rivalry.
Yes, after a long rivalry of her being awful. I ended up killing her. But she ended up poisoning me because if she died, she didn't want to be the only one that died, and if she didn't die, then at least she got to kill me.
She poisoned her sword with a very deadly neurotoxin. Yeah.
And so, but she also made it, it was excessively deadly.
Yeah,
so
it was going to kill you.
So it couldn't just be healed. It had to like have a very, very, very strong person there to heal it.
Yeah.
Because she was like, well, she'll just go back to the Wyrmtamers, they'll heal her, and it'll be done. So she like made sure she went above and beyond to get something that would kill me.
It was lethal to even the most seasoned adventurer.
But Petra, my girl, was there to help me kill her, and so I got caught by some guards after some quick thinking, hiding her body in a tapestry.
And that was Petra had gotten pregnant and then had children. So she had given birth like a couple weeks before this happened, and then she's like, "Yeah, girl, you got to go take somebody out. I'm with you." She grabbed her knives and headed out the door.
Well, the best thing about it was she didn't tell me.
Oh yeah, she followed you.
I went to go kill Halia, so it was after. Okay, so it was after
she would have fucking died.
It was after a meeting in the council room. Halia tried to pull some shit that was gonna kill everybody.
Yeah, she was in fact a traitor, but had plausible deniability that she was involved.
But Holly knew that wasn't true, and that she almost just killed fucking everyone.
Oh yeah.
And so she wasn't going to stand for it anymore. Like, she already hated her, but at this point, she was literally threatening the lives of everybody she loved, and more than that, because she was trying to kill the people that were going to go fight Tiamat. So I followed her, and I got into a fight with her. But the best part of it all was Petra just followed me.
Yeah.
And she came out of nowhere, and she helped me, and she actually really made a difference between me not dying and dying, because we ended up killing her, Halia.
Yeah.
And the regard is coming. So I had a magic tapestry that was a portal to a place we had known previous that I'm not going to get into just yet.
Right.
But I shoved her body in the tapestry, closed it up, put it in my backpack, and then the guards were like, something's going on, and I was like, I got stabbed, and they ran away.
Yeah.
But I was in the midst of dying, and so they were going to take me to a hospital whether I wanted to go or not.
Right.
And I told Petra to go get Lundquist, my dad, and my husband.
Right.
And so she went to go tell everybody, and amongst Lundquist coming to see me, Asher coming to see me, Raffi coming to see me, and Petra coming to see me, Geth also came to see me.
That's true. He was the only other one in the party who did.
Yeah, and he was worried as fuck. I don't know if it was just Ryan trying to get info out of me as Ryan through Geth, but he was like, you need to tell me who did this, because I'm going to hunt them down, and I'm going to I'm going to make them pay. Anything they did to you, I'm going to do to them twicefold, and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, even if that was just Ryan trying to get me to admit that I just committed something they didn't want me to do.
Right.
As a person, Geth is he was really worried. Yeah.
But the thing is, that could have been a way for him to do that, out of character. Mm-hmm. But in character, it's it was completely logical. That was an angle for Ryan, the player, to learn that information. Possibly. It could have been he did it because that's what Geth would have done, but also it happened because that's what Geth would have done. Geth did seem to have a very vested interest in Holly's survival, and they weren't not friendly, but they didn't have a close connection. So I guess I am actually kind of curious as to what Geth's opinions about Holly were. I mean, she was definitely the best archer we had, and she was a crack shot.
Right.
So
Well,
like,
the thing too is because then down the line, after our like big time skip, Holly ended up breeding direwolves.
oh yeah.
And she gave a big unit of them to Geth. So it's like,
So he could rebuild his forces.
Yeah, and like make sure that his town stayed protected that time, and he could potentially do it himself. I know he would have a bunch of good soldiers to do it, but it doesn't hurt to have a giant direwolf army.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
So like the thing was is they never had huge moments, but like when it mattered, they apparently cared about each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I didn't really notice until the end, which was neat.
I gotta say, that never came up to me as well, but that is definitely a thing that happened a lot.
Let's see.
Sometimes the DM learns things about his campaign.
I wrote down that I loved Melisana and Asher floating drunk in a wishing well.
Oh, yeah, when they went to go hang out one of the nights before we went off to war.
Because Holly and Melisana were really good friends.
Yes.
And Luciano and Asher were really good friends.
Yes, science buddies.
They were couples in their individual rights.
Right.
But they never hung out in the opposite direction. Like, Holly didn't hang out with Luciano.
Because she couldn't stand him.
Because she fucking didn't want to. And Melisana never hung out with Asher.
But there was no reason why. They just didn't hang out.
Just Asher was quiet and he wasn't going to be like, let's hang out.
Right.
And Melisana had shit to do, so she never, like, thought to really do it.
Yeah. She didn't really take a lot of time for herself. She was like the mom friend who never stopped working.
So there was a time where Luciano went to go do his own thing. And I think it wasn't the night Holly was in the hospital, but she was out drinking with Longquist.
Oh, yeah, that was when you went on your pub crawl to the Yawning Portal.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so she went to go look for Luciano in Asher's room, and he was like, oh, he's gone. And then she's like, oh, well, where's Holly? And he's like, she's went out drinking with Lundquist. And she's like, do you want to go drinking? And so they did.
Yeah.
And they both just got wasted and floated in a fountain in the middle of the city.
Yeah. That was like Melisana being like, I never let loose. And Asher was like, I guess me too. They just like got drunk and like just like shared their feelings and like chit-chatted. It was nice, yeah.
Oh, I also had a lot of different details about Holly and Asher renewing their vows.
Oh, yeah. So, the wedding episode.
A week before we went to war, Holly and Asher renewed their vows, kind of just like in case they died, but also because Lundquist was a priest, and so he could cast ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
So it would give us boosts to AC. Which is like it makes us harder to hit.
Yeah. Basically, it was like he was using a divine ritual as like being a cleric. He could like cast a spell and like petition his god to like bind the two of them together, and as long as they were close to each other, magic would protect them and shield their bodies.
Mm-hmm. I have all the songs for the wedding written out.
Oh wow.
I had it. I loved the trials beforehand. Like, where is it? I have a note card that had, like, Holly picked out bridesmaids from among the group, and Asher picked out groomsmen.
Yeah, and you did it in the traditional Calcollan wedding style, where the groom and the groomsmen were forced to go through a trial of each of the individual bridesmaid, and they had to complete all of the trials in order to make it to the wedding on time. Like, you have to actually succeed.
Yeah, you had to succeed through all of the bridesmaids' challenges
to
get to the bride's challenge, and then once you complete the bride's challenge, then you can go to the wedding.
Right.
The bridesmaids were Melisana, Callista, and Petra. The groomsmen was Luciano, Lundquist, and Geth.
Yeah.
I wrote down the traditions. The traditions were no seeing the bride before the wedding ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
When the groom and groomsmen arrive at the temple, the bridesmaids have to meet them at the steps, each with a challenge. They have to complete them before they're allowed in. After the ceremony, the groomsmen have to after the ceremony, so after they're done with all the vows and all that stuff, the groomsmen cut the sash from the groom's outfit and tear it into pieces until it's all cut. And they also do that to the bride's veil.
Right.
And then each piece is given out to one of the groomsmen and grooms, and then other people that attended the ceremony, and they're all supposed to be lucky.
Yeah, they give you good luck.
So for the mechanics of the game, it gave everybody a luck point.
Yeah, exactly.
which was fun.
Yeah, it was a fun little way to like make that whole wedding ceremony like something that like actually helped you guys before the war and like gave everybody a chance to like have like cool snapshot role playing moments before you like headed off to your final battle.
It was really fun. And then
I love that episode too. That was such a good time.
and also at the wedding reception, Holly had this weird habit of collecting pieces of the monsters and stuff that we killed. And so I kept all the different scales and teeth and like eyes and stuff from all the dragons we killed, and I made suits of armor out of them.
Yeah.
And so I gave out suits of armor to everybody at the end of the wedding. Not everybody, but a few different people.
Sure.
I gave one to Lem, one to Unity. Oh, Lem and Unity ended up getting married, by the way.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true.
Not now, but later they did. I gave one to Lem, one to Unity as like an olive branch almost. Not exactly, because I still hate that. Not them. I hate Lem.
Yes.
But I was like, whatever, just take it. I gave one to Melisana, and then Kuramaru got one.
Yeah, Kuramaru got a suit of direwolf dragon scale armor, which was dope.
But I also wrote down that Lem refused to congratulate Holly and Asher on their wedding, but he did thank Holly for the armor.
Because that was something he got. That's a special present for him.
Yeah, it was for him, so he was fine with that. And then I also wrote down that at the reception, Holly taught Kellen how to shotgun a beer.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. How old was he? 17?
Yeah.
Oops.
Well, he asked Holly's permission to...
medieval times. He can drink a beer.
Yeah, I was going to say. He asked Holly's permission to drink at the wedding, and Holly was like, duh.
That was when he did the roast, right? He roasted everybody.
Yes, he also roasted everybody.
Yeah, he got a little tipsy and then he roasted everyone in the party.
Cyrano coaxed Asher into pushing her into the fountain at the wedding.
Oh.
Because he filled it with bubbles and he was like, it's like a bath, just push her in. And she was like, you better fucking not. But then Asher pushed her in and she was lounging in the thing, and then Kellen was drunk and roasted everybody.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
That's also when Kellen asked out Aurora.
That was when, yeah. So Aurora was a character in Holly's backstory. Basically,
Aurora was Holly's cousin.
Yeah, Holly's cousin, who was a member of their family. She was a fire sorceress, and she was like this like fiery red-headed girl. She was like a couple of years older than Kellen was, and Kellen like had a noted weakness for redheads. That was just like a thing that kind of came to fruition throughout the course of the campaign, and so he like saw her and he was just like, I'm going to marry her, like over dramatic stupid about it.
Like Raffi had to like pull him away because she came to like one of our meetings and Kellen was just like, I love you, and he was like, tone it back.
Yeah, no, she showed up because remember we only had 15 people at the time for our big tournament because Petra needed a fill-in because Petra was literally going to give birth. So she's like, I can't fight in like this grand arena because I'm like I have a baby. And so we called Aurora over to come
just
fill in Petra's spot. Yeah, to be like a fighter in our tournament. And she showed up and Kellen like did the like dramatic sock across the hardwood floor slide and like hand behind the back of the head. And he's just like, hey, what's up, beautiful? Like, just like never met her before. And he's just like, that's the love of my life. I'm going to go loudly introduce myself to her.
I'm Kellen.
I'm Kellen, and I love you.
I also wrote down that
It worked.
It worked out. Satanta trying really, really hard not to rip his suit.
Oh yeah, because we put him in a suit, but he was so large. He just like stood there like he was like trying. So he's like I can't. If I flex too hard, I'll ruin it. And it's very nice and tailored so well.
He was even wearing it the next day.
Yeah, because he couldn't get out of it. Because he couldn't bend his arms.
Our wedding song was I think it was Rejoice in Love from Fire Emblem Fates.
Oh yeah, we actually use like like music from like Spotify and from games and things like that too, like to give a little soundscape to the wedding. It was nothing with vocals, right? It was all
instrumental.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
What is it? I also love the final council where Raffi totally like tore Kellen's dad a new one.
Oh yeah.
So
Kellen's father.
Virion. Each person got one of their characters nominated to lead an army of Waterdeep's picking or something.
Each of us had a character who was a commander of the forces, and the rest of us were shock troops. Because we all had to play everyone on the battlefield. That was going to get crazy. So we gave like the big battlefield stuff to the commanding characters as like main characters, and the other characters kind of like moved about the battlefield and did other things.
Right. So Raffi was my character that got nominated to lead a troop because duh.
Yeah. He was a natural born leader of men. It makes sense.
And Kellen's father was the leader of the elves.
The Misty Forest elves. He was their general. Yep.
And so he was put under Raffi to follow him into battle.
Mm-hmm.
And
Raffi at this point was basically Kellen's adopted father figure, because his father was utterly incapable of parenting.
Mm-hmm. And like I was gonna say, like Kellen basically thought of Holly as a sister already.
Oh yeah.
And then he met Raffi, and so he kind of like adopted Raffi as a father.
Yeah.
And so then his biological father gets put under Raffi for like the fight, and
for the actual march to war.
Raffi could actually tell that he just wasn't happy about it. He was just putting on airs because he's like, oh, of course, like
right, yeah.
And Raffi was like, I won't have him. And he was like, what? And he's like, I don't want him. He's like, I wouldn't want him by my side, at my back, near me at all. Like, I don't want him. You can do whatever you want with him, but I won't take him because he obviously doesn't want to follow me. And it's like written all over your face. And so basically, to try and save face, Kellen's dad kneeled and like held his sword up and like had to pledge his allegiance or whatever.
Yeah.
And Raffi like wasn't happy about it, but he was like, I guess that's better.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
And ended up taking him, but he embarrassed the crap out of him.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Because like he had just put on this air, like it was almost like this arrogance of like, I'm going to be led into battle by some human like
savage.
Yeah. Where like in reality like, he wanted to be, and that's the thing, is that like in his own kind of like fucked up like high elven fantasy Tywin Lannister kind of way, he's like, the only person I would honestly respect leading me in battle is my son. I want him to prove that he's finally achieved something. If he's to lead me, then maybe I'll follow. But I mean, he always wanted Kellen to pick up a sword and be this noble leader and commander of men, and Kellen was like a goofy, fun-loving kid who wanted to be a hero and was a sorcerer. Like right. He was a mage, and his father thought that made him like weak and scrawny and embarrassing. And
right.
So he's like, I want my son to prove that he's strong. And Kellen was just like, actually, fuck you.
Yes. And so that was one of my favorite moments because he embarrassed the ever-living shit out of him.
Oh yeah, made a mock of him in front of like every noble in that council. There's like 100 people in that room.
Pretty much anyone respected in Waterdeep as a soldier.
Yeah. Anyone respected as a soldier, politician, or commander. In the Sword Coast as a whole, because there were people from everywhere. Yeah, he was definitely made a mock of and ridiculed, which was great. Well, he deserved it.
Even Lem respected Raffi. Like, they weren't friends, but Lem...
It was hard not to.
Lem gave Holly shit, but like, it makes sense. But I figured when he met Raffi, he'd also give Raffi shit because he was leader to a woodland band.
Yeah, so he didn't see that as noble enough.
I didn't think he would see it as noble enough.
Right.
But he actually like respected him perfectly fine. There was nothing wrong with him and Raffi. I also wrote down that I loved Raffi and Satanta before the war. It was the night before the war.
Oh yes.
Satanta went to confide in Raffi about the pre-battle jitters he had.
Right.
And they had like a fully grown man sleepover.
Yeah, of course, as one does.
We love non-toxic kings in this house.
A healthy male relationship.
Yeah. They were both nervous, and so they just had a sleepover, and it was good.
Yeah. No one says that just because you're in your 40s doesn't mean you can't have a sleepover.
Yeah, just because you're two really beefy 40-year-old men does not mean you can't sleep in the same bed.
Right.
Let's see.
That was so cute. Isn't it? Just like, I need help. Like this, like 7'5",
Well, he wasn't like, I'm
300,
scared. Yeah.
300-pound monster was just like, I'm nervous. Can we hang out?
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
He was like, I'm just a little nervous about the thing tomorrow. And Rafi just patted the bed. He was like, come on, big guy.
Yeah. Come hang out with me.
So good. I actually also wrote down that, speaking of Lem respecting Rafi, but not Holly, there was a big attack on a few different, like, it was War Day, and there was a big attack going on a few different locations that were important to us because of other plot things that happened in the very beginning of the story.
Yes.
And they took Holly's mother captive, and Lem actually ended up saving her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And all of that was actually, to bounce back to something, all of the reason why, like, your village got attacked and you guys got distracted and, like, sent away from the battlefield for a while was because of a decision you made at that exact point when you rolled your first natural 20.
Yep.
The individual who was responsible for attacking your town was captured between those orcs and goblins, and you guys rescued him and didn't finish him off when he turned on you.
I should have. It's still a regret I have.
Yep. Instead of shooting him in the back of the head, you pushed him into a well, and then he met a kraken god and came back to bite you.
Long story as short as I can make it. There was a captive between those two warring parties that lived on that first island we ever went to. We spent a night with him, and he was going to try and show us how to get off the island. I figure that was actually a guise, because he brought us down into the depths of the island.
Yeah, he brought you into the catacombs.
Tried to kill Callista.
Yes.
Because he wanted to kill all of us. And
he thought that killing you would bring his master back to life. He was like a servant of an old pirate king.
And so I was going to kill him because we subdued him together. Right. And then Callista convinced Holly not to kill him and that we would just push him down the well and maybe he'd be able to save himself or something, but like we wouldn't be responsible for killing him.
Right, of course.
And so then we took his master, we fought his master's like reanimated corpses, got a boat, got off the island, easy peasy.
No problem.
But then while he was drowning, met a demon lord, ended up becoming a warlock to him, ended up coming back and having a grudge against, in particular, well, all of us, but mostly me. I said that Holly got in trouble later on in life, and that's the reason why.
Yeah.
I wasn't as vigilant. And speaking of, Holly got very paranoid over this campaign.
She developed extreme anxiety as a result of things that absolutely caused that anxiety.
She wanted to have a magic item that would help her see. Well, she couldn't actually see. She got it enchanted. It was that guy in disguise.
All he asked for in return instead of payment was for you to take these 4 glowing magical sticks and put them in random spots in the world. She put them down. She did the favor. The item got delivered to her by a mysterious courier in the middle of the night in a cloak.
And I figured that was that.
And then a couple of months later, we went back to one of the spots where she had put the sticks, and a portal to literal hell had opened.
I figured that the stakes, since I was trying to get a spell for seeing, that the stakes would just make it possible for him to see those spots. Like, I thought he might have been like a magic person trying to see all over the world.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what he wanted you to think.
But yeah, so he actually made me open a bunch of portals all over the earth. We ended up going a side quest where we had to get them all back and fight all the demons. And then I ended up admitting that happened to the Council of Waterdeep. I had to go on trial for it. I ended up getting acquitted. It's fine.
Right, yeah. That was that acquittal for a thing that had happened we talked about previously. But yeah, she she ended up, for a while there, a bunch of the nobles were like, well, someone has to answer for this because a lot of
People are
innocent
dying.
people are dead because of these demons. So if she's the one who did it, we should probably execute her for it. And then a bunch of other people were like, we can't execute her. She's part of an adventuring group that's solving a kind of a
really
bigger
big
problem. So it was like a back and forth for a while, and no one was really sure if like the side that wanted her executed for the crime or the side that thought that she had like earned her retribution was going to win out in the end.
But back to the point of what I was trying to say in the first place was that she came back in the final battle while we were supposed to be traveling to the war
You were
spot.
literally marching to the battlefield.
And we ended up having to go to Calcala because it was being attacked, among other places.
Yeah.
And he had
home of Ventress and Highport City on the island as well.
And my mom had been taken captive by this guy in particular, and Lem actually ended up through odd means ended up saving her. And I also thought, as Holly, that he wasn't going to treat her with respect because she was just the queen of a bunch of like people that live in a forest village.
Right.
But he actually, other than actual Calcala, which he disrespected a whole bunch along the way.
Yes.
He respects Raffi and Ezra, Holly's mom.
Mm-hmm. Fairly, which was a little bit of a surprise, but not out of character for Lem.
Yes.
He's judgmental of those who he doesn't see as deserving of nobility, but there's a lot about Raffi and Ezra's character that makes them come across as very noble, very regal, responsible people, and in a lot of ways he respected them for their personage, whereas he didn't respect you because you were brash, abrasive, and didn't care what people thought.
Yes,
appearance is everything to nobles.
Exactly. And then what my last favorite thing that I want to talk about anyway, before I share a few of my quotes, and then maybe we talk about a few behind the scenes things.
Sure, and yeah, it's going to go a little longer. We've accepted that.
Is that the time that Holly and Lundquist went to the Yawning Portal, and we were going to go on that. We went on a bar dive.
For those of you who don't know Forgotten Realms lore, the Yawning Portal is like an adventurer bar in the metropolis city of Waterdeep. It's run by an old retired adventurer. There is a dungeon underneath the bar that people go down into and test their strength. But it's also a huge tavern.
And also the tavern has a thing up top where you drink one of their drinks, and then you're supposed to go to 7 other bars and get particular drinks and drink them, and then make your way in a circle back to the Yawning Portal, and then you're supposed to get a specific drink and then go down the well.
Yeah, and you have to fight some clear out a section of the dungeon while you're pissed drunk on magic booze. It's a challenge.
Lundquist is a dwarf, so he basically cannot be drunk.
He was a dwarf, so he was already resistant to it, and he was a monk.
Yes,
so he was able to literally use the ki flowing through his body to purify toxins. So he literally was incapable of getting drunk. He's pub crawls easy.
I was a human, a 5'4" human drinking magical booze.
You were a human lady.
At 7 different bars. It doesn't matter how strong I am. I can't drink that much booze and not just pass out.
You were shit-faced.
Holly got shit-faced as fuck. And ended up I think it was literally on our way back to the Yawning Portal. We had gotten through. You
hadn't gotten into the dungeon yet, for sure.
No, we were on our way back to go to the dungeon, but we got through the rest of the bars. I was wasted.
Yeah, you were stumbling on yourself, falling in the streets,
and we were walking with Kurumaru, who is literally is taller than me at this point. He's a 5'6" wolf.
He was a dire wolf that's roughly the size of a draft horse. He was huge.
And a noble was walking down the street and mentioned something about me not having or should have had him there or something like that. Oh, that creature shouldn't be roaming around on the street. Oh my god.
Yeah, he was insulting you, calling you a barbarian or something like that.
No, it was specifically about Kurumaru, I remember.
Oh yeah. That's right. Yeah, that he's this beast shouldn't be wandering the streets.
Yeah, especially at night because, oh god, who knows if he'll attack somebody.
Right.
And I was excuse me? And he's just like, maybe contain your animal. And I was just like, fuck you. And I punched him.
Yep.
Mind you, I am an archer. I'm not good at punching people. But I was good today because I just hit him right in the face.
You had drunk person strength. You were just like, poof,
I knocked him out cold in one punch. And then Lundqvist just like brute strengthed me onto Kuromaru's back, and I passed out. And then he drove Kuromaru back to the wormhole and like put me in bed.
Yeah, you're like, we're not doing this bar crawl. Like it's over.
Wasn't the next day my wedding?
Yes. Yes, that was the same night that Melisana and Asher got drunk and floated around in the fountain.
Good day.
Yep, it was a good time. A bunch of us were really hungover the next day, and then we had to go to that wedding, but that was fine. Yeah, you two were really hungover for your own wedding.
Why not?
Yeah, hilarious. I mean, that's half the fun, right?
Yeah, it's a vow renewal. We'll find.
Yeah, it was fine. Yeah, that's true. It was a vow renewal. It wasn't like their wedding. So.
We're about to go die in a war. We might as well just be drunk.
Absolutely.
But, so I'm going to see if I can run through this book and find any good quotes.
Sure. In the meantime, while you're digging up some quotes, I'm going to share a little behind-the-scenes story. For Kyle, if you're listening, you might have heard me complain about this a little bit at one random point post-campaign. So one of the things that I had done is because this adventure was very heavily themed around dragons. They were an adventuring party, literally called the Wyrmtamers. They were dragon hunters. There was an evil dragon cult. One of the things that I used a lot was as they were adventuring, the cultists that they would be fighting, and especially some of the high-ranking ones, would be equipped with a magic item called a dragon tooth dagger. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a dagger that is like enchanted to contain the properties of the dragon whose tooth had been taken from it, and the tooth is set into the weapon as literally like a blade. There were so many of them. I even ended up adding some for a reason we'll get to. But basically, a number of the high-ranking like cultists were equipped with dragon tooth daggers, with the understanding that they would defeat these people, and then likely, as your average Dungeons and Dragons party does, loot the corpse of the fallen opponent and take any of their valuable and rare trinkets. If not to sell them, then maybe to keep them. And my thought process was eventually, like, at least one of everybody's characters is going to get their hands on a dragon tooth dagger they can fight with. Maybe one of each of the colors of dragon. Someone would have a fire tooth dagger. Someone would have a lightning tooth dagger. Acid, poison, cold, things like that. But Destiny and my party's, I guess, clumsiness had other plans in mind, because I don't think you guys got a single goddamn one of them.
No, we did get one.
Oh, you did? Which one was that?
That was the one that we found. You said, Barry, you talked about this one dagger to me in particular because it was the only one we found. Petra found it, cut her hair with it, put it back down.
Yeah, that was great.
Holly found it, took it, never used it, mind you.
Right.
And then at the very end of the campaign gave it to Unity.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So by this point, there was one that a very powerful cultist had on his belt. They challenged him to a fight and knocked him unconscious, and then they arrested him without taking his stuff. The dragon tooth dagger was removed by the guards who arrested him, and they kept it in storage, and you never asked about it. Mm-hmm. And then he got let out. And challenged to a one-on-one fight, and then eventually killed in combat by Unity specifically. But at no point did anyone ever bother with his dagger. It just it disappeared. Somebody took it. One of the guards probably was just like, "Oh, cool," and probably sold it or some shit like that. By the time you had gotten to that point that you had mentioned, I had already put 5 dragon tooth daggers into the campaign, and you guys either had it like literally next to you, and then we're just like, okay, let's move on, and then left it, or just straight up like walked around it. There were 2 in the in the swamp in the castle, or the castle in the swamp, the Mere Dead Men.
Mm-hmm.
There was, on the upper floor, there was that elven guy's room, Drawmore or Borngray.
Uh-huh.
He was like the elven supremacist who was like working with the cult. He literally had the dagger in a drawer in his room, and you guys checked under his bed, found a different lockbox, and you're like, that's everything, and you just took the lockbox and left. And then there was a crates full of supplies in the bottom level, and the crates could be stacked to climb up like an upper part of the cliff and go around a portion of the underground part. So that's where that teleportation circle to the lodge was.
Okay.
And like you could have opened any of those crates and looted them around. I like mentioned like as you loot them they would jingle, like they had coins and treasure in them. They were stuff literally for Tiamat's hoard.
Oh.
And you guys like were like, okay, cool, crates, and you just stacked them up against the wall and fucking climbed up them and just walked past them. Yep. So you just never bothered getting them, and like it was like the 6th dagger that I had put into as a possible, like this time they're gonna get it. And you found the corpse of the cultist by the corrupted wishing pool in that like old wizard's maze.
Yes.
And you were trying to find the secret entrance to like the deeper part of the tunnel where his tomb was, and you needed to like sacrifice something into the pool.
Mm-hmm.
You had seen like he had sacrificed one of his own cult members, and maybe they had gotten through. But basically he was dead there, and you like had to uncover the reason why. So Petra walked up to the thing, and the guy was laying there. The dagger that he was wielding, his dragontooth dagger, literally in the hand of his corpse.
Right.
And Petra was just like, oh, well, I love my long hair, so I'll just cut my long hair and dump that into the pool, and that's a sacrifice for me, so that'll open the door. And she grabbed the enchanted, magical, acid damage dealing dragontooth dagger from his hand, grabbed her hair, cut it, and then she's like, okay, and then I'll put the dagger down, and you guys just fucking left. And I was like, oh.
But then we came back and I found it.
Then you actually, I was like laughing to myself, but trying really hard not to laugh. And then you guys did end up coming back, and Holly was like, oh, this looks useful, and like picked it up and put it on her belt. You never used it.
I don't actually even think I ever figured out what it really was.
No, you never attuned to it. You never wielded it without it. You just were like, oh, this is a nice dagger made out of a dragontooth. That's cute. It was a +1 dagger that dealt an extra 1d6 acid damage. It was pretty good. Or maybe poison damage. It was something. But I can't remember which color dragon it was, whether it was a black dragon or a green dragon. But but yeah, so that was the story of the dozen dragontooth daggers
that we never found.
You literally only found one of and never used.
Let's see. Okay, this one was from Holly. Ended up putting a curse on Sven.
Oh my god, yep.
She beat, or they were in a fight
during the tournament.
Oh, they had a loser's bracket.
Yeah, they had a loser's bracket where people could go watch the people who had lost the rounds, and Sven had just lost in his match to Cyrno because Cyrno, the crafty wizard who was battling against a berserk fighter barbarian in heavy armor, realized he couldn't win in a fair-up fight, so he cast Death Ward on himself so that if he would get knocked unconscious, he would drop to 1 instead. Mm-hmm. And then he grabbed Sven and dimension doored them both 500 feet into the air. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I'm talking about the rafting fight.
I know, but that's what I was saying. So then he dropped down and lost, and Sven was like, I'm pissed. I can't believe that I lost a fight to that skinny little nerd boy. And so then in the loser's bracket, he got paired up against Raffi, who had just lost in fight to Satanta.
Of course.
Because
he knew he would.
Satanta is the Hulk. Like you don't win in a fist fight against the Hulk. But they ended up in the match, and then Sven just ragdolled him because he was so mad.
And so Holly got pissed at that because she's like, okay, you can win the fight, but you know you're gonna win. You don't have to fucking.
Yeah, he literally used Raffi as like a battering ram. I grabbed him by the legs and like slammed him into the fence. Like it was bad.
And so she went to Blackstaff Tower and had the current Blackstaff put a curse on Sven to shrink his dick inside his body.
Yeah, he had a shrinky dink for a little while.
And that kind of humbled him for a while. But we were on different missions because God knows I was going to let that curse go for as long as I wanted it to. And Sven talked to Cyrano because Cyrano was the local magic guy.
Yeah, absolutely. He was the wizard. He had the know-how.
And he was like, do you know what's going on with this thing?
Yeah.
And Cyrano was like, oh, I don't, but I'll figure it out. And he's like, okay, do you know if you'll be able to fix it? He's like, yeah, probably. No, I'll get it fixed. I'll figure it out. He's like, okay. And then this is the quote. He says, can you give me a little warning before my dick pops out? And he's like, Cyna's like, I can. And I never knew what he meant by that, but it's like, okay.
I don't think I know what he meant by that either. I mean, I assume he was just going to be like, I'm going to cast the spell now, but like, Cyrano didn't know what the fuck he was doing at that point. He's like, I can figure it out. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but...
He ended up going the long way around, connected some dots, figured out Holly probably put the spell on him.
Yeah.
Got her to take it off, and she only did because Cyrano's adorable.
Right.
Then the other one is from when Petra went to go get Lundquist when Holly was in the hospital.
Oh, yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she went up to him. He was in a bar drinking with some other dwarves.
Some of the dwarven generals.
Yeah. And so she was like, he walks in and he's like, what's up? And she's like, so you want it blunt? And Lundquist went, probably. And Petra went, Holly's in the hospital. And then Lundquist turned to all of them and went, okay, guys, I gotta go. My friend's in the hospital. She tripped.
Oh, yeah, because, like, Petra had mentioned, like, yeah, she got into a fight with Holly, and Holly's, like, maybe not alive.
This one was out of game. This was just when I was doing all of our characters' art for the first time.
Uh-huh.
And Kyle went, oh, yeah, did you ever finish doing Lem's picture? And I was like, yeah, no, I actually finished his rough draft, zoomed out, and thought, oh, no, he's hot, and then drew everyone else instead.
I vividly remember that moment.
Oh, this was from when they did the trials for the vows.
Okay, yeah.
Callista made everyone give a speech.
Oh no. Yeah.
And talking is not Asher's key points.
No, he has very bad stage fright.
Callista made them do a "Who's Your Hero" speech. And he totally bombed. He rolled a nat 1 on his speech.
Yeah, he rolled a nat 1 on performance. He tried to tell... Didn't he, like,
He tried to talk about his stepmom.
Yeah. And how much she meant to him and, like, how much of a guiding force she was. But he just, like, stuttered and, like, spit and, like, almost threw up a little bit. Yes. And it was just really bad.
He's not good about talking about things without getting really emotional and almost barfing. And so then he got down and Callista, like, gave him a pity pass.
Yeah. Like, she's like, you bombed that speech, but we feel
She's
bad.
like, well, doesn't it make you feel better to get it all out in the open? And Ashley was like, no. And she's like, even a little? And he's like, no.
Oh my god.
Oh, and then he threw the powder. Horribly. He threw powder of sneezing and coughing at Melisana during her spoon race trial. My goodness.
Oh yeah, because they had the spoon race. Yeah, because so like they had to work together. Like each of them got a spoon and an egg, and they had to run an obstacle course. And the bridesmaids were like throwing shit at them and like trying. So Melisana like jumped out at him to try to get him to drop his egg, and he just like threw like sneezing powder that he had made with alchemy at her, and she just like launched into a coughing and sneezing fit and like fell on the ground, and he was like and just kind of kept going like all on instinct, just pocket sand.
On Ventress when we were fighting that final battle before we went to the war.
When we were fighting on Ventress, you were in the ship. Oh,
no, this is when we were on land. We were fighting the big tentacles on the ground.
Oh, you were fighting the Kraken tentacles that had burst through the ground. Yeah.
Asher made a potion that could make people fly for a period of time, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
He gave one to Cyrano, and Cyrano yelled, "You've unleashed me! I can fly now! Your earthly prisons mean nothing!"
The wizard, the wizard bard, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, and then the time Callista was talking to a bunch of other people. When it started with the old group, they figured out Callista got a demon staff and we're trying to talk to Callista.
Oh,
okay, so it's when everyone figured out Callista's staff was a demon staff.
Right, that it had a demon sealed inside of it. Yeah.
She told Melisana she could handle it, and everyone was there trying to like convince her that, oh, maybe we should like get it looked at, maybe we should do something with it. And she said that she's better, smarter, and less likely to do silly things than Holly does.
Oh, I remember that.
And Asher was pissed.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. I remember there was a lot of like low key like jabs between Callista and Holly, like back and forth. Like the two of them definitely had like a little bit of drama going on.
We liked each other, but I wasn't a stick in the mud and she was.
Right.
Sorry, Kyle.
No, yeah, I mean that's not a jab at
No.
That's how Holly perceived Callista, exactly.
And mind
the two of them are very opposite people. Going back to our color philosophy thing, she's very blue-white and you're very red-green.
They just had some friction. There was no real bad blood between them. They're fine. It's just sometimes they clash.
Absolutely.
And I love Callista.
It's just, of course.
She's just...
She just got on Holly's nerves sometimes. Mm-hmm.
I can't remember when this was from. As a dramatic reincarnation of. Melisana.
Should I be bantering while you're reading? Oh, jeez. Okay.
No. It's fine. I was just trying to skim that and see if I could understand what this was from.
Okay.
We were all at a bar, and Sienna was approaching somebody, and Melisana was like, "So, are we under attack?"
Mm-hmm.
And or are they under attack? And Asher was like, "Of friendship."
Oh, so cute.
Let's see.
I'm trying to think if I had any really good quotes none that I remember off the top of my head, maybe, except for some of the ones you already mentioned, of course. More moments for me as the DM. I was heavily involved in a lot of moments.
There's a bunch of quotes I had in here from like when not Callista, goddamn, when Unity and Lem started their relationship.
Oh yeah,
because I wrote down every
after the tournament. Yeah.
I started writing down every single thing that they wrote down that made me grossed out, and and so I have all these different things in here. Like it's not the direct quote because I can't find it in the book,
right?
But it was when Lem was plotting to kill his dad.
Oh, yeah, that's when they found his dad back in Waterdeep. Yep, he made his way there and tried to, like, take ownership of Lem's, like, accomplishments because he was the senior Ironcloak.
And so he was, he was talking to Unity about his plan to do it, and she's like, "So, what are you asking me to kill your dad?" And he's like, "It wouldn't be the weirdest thing I asked you to do." And I was like, "What?"
the visible revulsion from our table. That was
just
funny.
From me.
They I guarantee you, and no, Kyle knows. They definitely did that just to get that reaction.
Well, I love it.
Just hilarious.
I'm not the Holly in me is revulsed.
Of course.
The Hannah in me is yes, I love it. It's gold.
Yeah, absolutely. Top quality banter.
But there was also the time it was the Highport attack.
Okay, yeah. Near the end of the campaign.
I'm going to try and make this as quick as an explanation as possible because it's just a quote, so I'm not going to try and make the explanation longer.
Right.
Ezra, Holly's mom, is from the nearby town. She's like the guy in charge's daughter. So she's like a princess to a port town.
Right.
And she didn't like her dad because he's a racist.
Yeah.
And so she ran away into the woods, ended up marrying Raffi, and it's a secret. They think she's dead. The people in the port town think that they're a bunch of savages. They don't like them.
Yeah, they don't associate with them.
If anything, they think that Kel Collins probably killed her.
Right.
And so the port town was under attack. Raffi ended up getting selected to go and try and fight off the demons invading it. And at this point, Ezra's nephew in the port town was being attacked.
Right.
And so Raffi and Satanta and a few others in our group swooped in to help reattach his arm because it got cut off.
Yep.
And to help him out. And Roderick, which is the guy's name, was questioning Raffi about his tattoos.
Yeah.
and if the set of 2 meant he was nobility or not, which it doesn't. One means that you're a Kilcolin villager,
Right.
and the other
ones.
one, and the other one means you get a second set on top if you're a warrior.
Right.
Raffi is technically their nobility, but he was like, no.
Yeah.
And Satanta was like, oh, Raffi's fucking with you. And Raffi's like, no, actually, I'm not. Like, pretending he wasn't because he didn't want to, like, explain. He didn't want a connection with this guy. He didn't want to, like, try and out his wife and, like, have a war start or anything weird.
Right.
So he's like, no, I'm not actually nobility at all for them. Nope. And Satanta was like, bah, Raffi. You're as leader as the last one. Don't sell yourself short.
Oh.
And Raffi's just like, no!
Stop! I don't want to draw attention to me.
But
if they look at me, they may find her.
Satanta's just being a lovable idiot. He's like, Raffi, don't do that to yourself. You're just as good as any other leader.
Now's not a good time to sell yourself short. You know that we love and respect you very much. It's like, now is not the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this guy is going to come to our house and kidnap her. Like, let's not.
Oh, God, yeah, this is when. Lundquist went to go hold Kellen's hand and instead smacked his ass at one point.
Oh.
I don't know why.
I don't remember what that was.
But then Kellen was like,
what
the hell? And Lundquist was like, what's a butt slap between friends?
Yeah.
And then Unity was like, yeah, what's a butt slap between friends? And then Lem slapped her ass and I vomited in real, like...
Yeah, like Holly vomited.
Holly actually threw up that time. She was like, bleh!
Yeah, she really...
Lem should not be allowed to touch anybody!
Yeah, she really could not. She could not do that. She was not a fan.
She couldn't do it. Enola fighting Lem over being disrespectful towards me. I really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, Enola being he's a blue-skinned tiefling who is one of Holly's childhood friends and a member of her council.
We were on that mission in Calcala, and
the to protect them from
being attacked by demons, and we were in the middle of town square, and I got mind controlled to think Cromar was on fire. So So I was standing there trying to put him out while he was sitting there confused. And then Lamb ran away. Unity ran away. Kellen, I'm pretty sure was there. He started to run away.
Yeah.
And then Lundquist went to go run, and he said, "Everyone leaves Holly a D&D adventure."
Yeah, oh my god. Oh, that before I forget, I do actually want to drop another very interesting.
Sure.
Let's
have that one be the last one. I've got plenty of other things here, but
sure. I'll do a. This is a kind of a lame behind the scenes.
Oh well, then I'll do one more quote afterwards, and then you can.
It's a lame behind the scenes tidbit, but so the villain who we had talked about, the one that they rescued on the island and then betrayed them, they pushed him into the water, and then he eventually came back and attacked their island. He became a warlock to Demogorgon, who saved him from the depths of the ocean and swore vengeance. He's the one who made all those stakes happen and you wanted you to put them all around. That was that guy. So he was actually a character who had existed as a vague NPC shell in the treasure hunt module named Kistake.
Yes.
And he was a servant of the pirate king Viladel. He was trying to resurrect his dead master, things like that. So Kistake was his name. His name is spelled Keestake.
Yep.
What does Stake spell?
Steak.
Steak. When I had that wizard make you put the stakes in the ground, I was literally that was my lame ass attempt at being that's a clue.
Well, you know what's really funny about that?
What's that?
I never learned how to spell his name.
So I kind of flubbed on that one, didn't
Literally, if you read through my book, it's written a different way every time.
Oh, really?
I never learned how to...
I gotta give it a look through one time.
I never learned how to spell it. I, to this day, do not know how to spell it. If you ask me to spell it, even though you just spelled it, I cannot.
You just this the revulsion you have for him just blocks it from your memory. Of course.
I'm also very dyslexic, and that name's a little complicated.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't start to fathom how to start spelling it.
Yeah, that's
like,
fine.
It might have a little to do with the revulsion also, like, but it's just I never could.
It
And
was also possible for other people in the party to pick up on dumb shit like that. I was expecting like
I don't think anyone else cared.
I was expecting maybe Sean to be like,
You think
steak, like, that's funny, like to make like a weird comment about it. But
No,
you were definitely the most paranoid character in the party.
The thing is, I think if anybody was going to pick it out, it would have been Ryan or Kyle.
Probably. Okay, that's fair.
Or me, but not me. Like,
sure.
I'm dyslexic. I'm not good with complicated words. I'm a phonetic speller.
Mm-hmm.
So stake would never come out as steak in my mind.
Yeah, there was an accent and shit. Yeah.
Yeah, like no, not happening. Sorry.
Fair. Okay, but yeah, that was my lame little, like, I literally was like, what should I have? Like, they could be, like, glass orbs. They could be, like anything that could theoretically be enchanted to produce a portal. I'm like, how about steaks?
Like...
Because, haha. Yeah, that's how you spell it.
Yeah, Keest.
She just wrote it out on a piece of, like, cardboard paper.
I would probably most likely spell it Keeestak. A-E, keys to K.
Oh, okay, yeah, I got you. Close.
Either way, I would have never got it.
That's fair. Well, I mean, yeah, it was like a lame way to draw that connection, and nobody picked up on it because why would you? So, yeah, that was like a little behind the scenes thing. That's what happens when I plan at 2 a.m.
Oh, it's fine. It was a good one. I just am not the girl for it, my dude.
That's fine. It all worked out. You not noticing it led to some very interesting B plot. So
the last quote in my book, which is not a great one,
but that's fine. We started strong. We'll go out with a whimper.
We beat Keys to K.
Yeah.
We were going to spend the rest of the night in Calcala and then bamf to the battlefield the next day.
Yes, teleport there afterwards.
Lundquist had lived in Calcala because he was still shunned from his town.
Right, he went there during
our time skip.
Pardon my yawning.
But he tried to go back to the forge or like to go find drinks, but a bunch of the stuff was destroyed.
Right.
And somebody came up to him that remembered him and said that they had booze and they could go drink. And so he was like, my man, and he like put his arm around his shoulders. He was like, you know Holly? And it's funny because Holly was the leader at that point.
Yeah.
So he's like, yes.
Hey, do you know that? Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, what I've seen some stuff. I tell you, I'll tell you about it as we head over. Now let me tell you about Holly and eyeballs. And then we were trying to transition, so literally as the scene was transitioning, you would just hear him yell out, she does what? In a pickle jar? Holly puts eyes in a pickle jar because she can see out of them magically.
Yeah, that was the item she got in exchange for the demon portals. Yep. Then I guess we will end on one little fun fact because there is actually a fun fact about that moment that I carried over. The guy who we ran a little side adventure that took place during the time skip. A bunch of shit went down, and then some of their kids went to Kelkala to deal with some stuff in our future campaign. Skaha, Satanto's Fae daughter.
Yeah.
She went to like the training ground and she met up with those two kids.
Yeah.
Shadow and Barry.
Yeah.
That guy who Lundquist stopped and was like, oh, let me tell you all about Holly. That is Barry's dad.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I built a whole like NPC lineage for them, and I was just like, oh, that could be a cool way to draw that together, because then if Lundquist comes up, then he could be like, oh yeah, my dad knows Lundquist. They like had a couple beers and were shooting the shit at one point. And like it never came up because none of you mentioned Lundquist, but like that was Barry's dad.
Good times.
Yeah, so that is a little historical walkthrough of our 5-year-long Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition campaign. If more like campaign stories or like fun D&D content is something you guys would be interested in, well, I mean, you're going to get plenty of it anyway, but feel free to comment because we'd like to hear if you want to know more about like our characters or like some more little side stories or some stuff about our current campaign.
Yeah, trust me, there's plenty of campaign 1 stuff we didn't talk about.
Oh my god, there's so much. We didn't even go into like half the missions you guys did. Yeah.
We literally were just trying to give you the like gist of it, and it's you can't even fit it. You can't fit it. And then there's campaign 2 stuff we could talk about. Like if you guys like hearing about the D&D campaign, like say so, and maybe we'll do another one of these for a joint episode, or if not, tell us and then we won't do it again.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, yeah, that's totally fine. Also, if you guys are interested in the idea of like maybe getting some snippets of a D&D campaign, or like maybe we've been tossing around the idea of doing a D&D campaign on the podcast. So like if that's something you guys would be interested in, let us know, because that's something that I think we'd like to do if we think that the people will enjoy it.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening to our fun little stories, and hopefully this kind of inspires you in your own campaigns to like,
or at least was a fun reading or
yeah, like, and if you're someone who hasn't played Dungeons and Dragons yet, maybe like, you know, listening to these stories kind of inspired you to maybe pick up a tabletop role playing game and do some storytelling with your friends of your own.
For sure. Tell us your D&D stories.
Oh my god, yes, if you have fun D&D stories in the comments, please tell them. If we get enough of them, maybe we'll read some of them on a future podcast. So yeah.
Sorry for going late, but thanks for listening. If you listened this long.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Next time we want to do a little Oh yeah,
it's your topic.
Next time's my topic. So all I will say about this next one is if you are a fan of not just this time we're gonna step away from Dungeons and Dragons a little bit. If you're a fan of like a variety of different like anime and television shows and like long running series that are really popular and iconic in the minds and hearts of you and your friends, and you've ever had like debates.
Oh God, we're debating.
Not quite. But if you've ever had like debates about who would do this better, who's better at this, then you might like next episode. I would stay tuned for that one. It's going to be a little bit of a fun jaunt through all of the nerddoms that me and Hannah are big fans of. But yeah, you'll see what I'm talking about when we get to it. But if that's the kind of thing you're interested in, please stay tuned. And thanks for listening to us.
Talk about D&D.
Yeah, we still don't have a sign off. So
we'll see you next time.
See you next time. We love you very much. Take care of yourselves.
And I'll see you later.
Take care.